So what was the company, since we're shouting out good, nice people that you just said that was helping you with?
Oh, you should have asked me that before we went live. I can look for it as we talk. But yeah, this awesome local company that I asked some questions about some tax things. And actually, I'm going to have to send it to you later because that whole conversation is archived somewhere. So, yeah, but a local tax company, I needed some help with some stuff and posted in this Facebook group, and a lot of different corporations gave a bunch of phone number or like gave different times of availability for like Zoom meetings and stuff. And this guy just reached out at like 9 p.m., explained the whole process in 30 minutes, and yeah, so really cool thing.
And all he wanted was just, hey, shout out my company, like it.
Just help out with a little bit of advertisement so that the next person knows.
See, I like what you said where you want to become an asset to their company, because I mean that really that's what it is. Like if you have such a positive interaction with someone who is literally just trying to spread their name, that's the best asset you can have.
Yep. Well, it's a delineation from everything that we've seen over the last 40 years, because I mean when you're trained within corporations, all of their training is follow the templates, wear the name tag, smile and act happy, and maintain a certain level of equanimity until you're allowed to leave.
Right.
And we don't need you anymore for the night. And it's also brought on with the expectation of, if you break this contract, we can leave at any point. But if we do, then you no longer have the ability to maintain your current homeostasis at home, which is crazy. So, like, yeah.
It is crazy, and it's so interesting. Do you look at a lot of other countries and how they kind of operate?
Honestly, I've been really focused on Utah, and like I've seen a lot of things on Facebook of what other countries are doing, and I mean, I heard amazing things about Norway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Is I don't know enough to really broaden the subject, but it seems like a lot of their companies in Norway and Finland and Sweden, they're very personable, and they understand that, like, at the core, unless you're doing something that you love doing, most people don't want to be spending 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day working for a company that's not paying them. So they have, like, I can't remember, it's something like 100 some odd days off a year that are set, and they work Monday, Tuesday, have Wednesday off, work Thursday, Friday, have Saturday, Sunday off. Like, I honestly think that if we want to build a true, I don't want to say utopia, because that will never happen, but if you want to build something that allows for your citizens to truly be happy, it is give us more freedom to be able to survive without having to worry about, I got to make sure I get my 40 hours.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that even on an anatomical scale, the human body isn't equipped to maintain the same action for longer than 6 hours.
Right.
So, I mean, like, we should, I think the first thing is cut down at least 2 hours a day and allow people to spend those 2 hours at home with family or doing whatever they want to do instead. And then also the whole idea of the corporate profit margin always wanting to be the highest priority and creating models that are only sustainable if the cost of an individual is like a 5 to 6% of that margin.
Right.
Like, those models are no longer viable at all. And so being able to redistribute more of that margin towards the actual employee during that process, and be willing as corporations to lower the profit margin of each interaction that is maintaining their infrastructure. I mean, those two things to me are paramount importance of first actions. And for the huge corporations that have billionaires or millionaires sitting at the table at the top, like, they've already proven that they can do that and not be too heartbroken over how much they're not getting in return. So,
and I really think too, a lot of it turns into, I've never been in a position of having enough money to not know what to do with it, as most people are in that situation. And I feel like when a lot of people get to that $1 million status, it just turns into like a, how much can I get?
Exactly.
And that really shouldn't be the mindset, because if you take the time and you listen to your employees and listen to the struggles that they're going through, a lot of them are very similar in the fact that, hey, I'm barely making rent.
Yep.
Rent is so, especially here in Utah, rent is crazy.
Yep.
You know, and I work at a company that I won't name, and they're fine, but there's been problems with raises, and it's like they give out dollar raises, which is $40 extra a week for me, which would help. What is that to $1 billion industry?
Yep.
Nothing. A penny on the floor.
Yep.
And that's what I don't get, is they're holding off on raises, but just to have that profit margin just a little bit higher. But for who? Your stockholders? Like,
no, I met this dude at one of the conventions over at the Salt Palace. I was an AV tech, and he was one of the companies. He was actually the CEO of one of the companies that was there presenting their product, and he was extremely excited about the fact that his company had made enough money that he was able to give healthcare to all of his employees.
That gives me chills.
Yeah,
that's
it was really
so
cool talking to him. And the more that I talked to him, he actually told me that he had a term that he has trademarked, and that I asked him if I could use it. But he said that money is the lubrication to life. It allows you to go wherever you want to go.
It's very true.
And so that's the thing, is for the people that have lived in the world where they can have the mentality of, I do have excess, where do I want to spend it? We need, like, taking into consideration that there are people that have never felt that,
right,
that have never had that kind of opportunity in life. So not only are we destabilizing and debilitizing people by taking them away from their lives and their families and their kids, and making them work hours that are not conducive for the human nature, but then we're siphoning so much away from them, and then we siphon so much out of them with tickets and parking and insurance and all these other things, that they go home and they don't even have the lubrication or the economic expenses to be able to do the things that they would even want to do during that time. It's like, like a painter that doesn't have enough money to buy a canvas, or a mechanic that doesn't have enough money to buy the next part for his car.
Right.
Like and the individual that has to wait months before they can make that expense. It's not, we're literally suppressing. It is the most interesting form of suppression, because it's the slowest boil.
Right. Well, and on top of the fact that, I mean, if we look at it, and I'm not saying businesses do this, because I think it's just inherently in. I don't think that it's anyone who's thought of this, but if you were an evil person, an evil, greedy person who just wants money, what's the best way to do it? Make sure that people have to work by doing all those things.
Codependency.
And, you know, I don't know if that is built in to our economy just flat out. I mean, we have a lot of opportunity for people to make a lot of money, especially in 2020, in different forms, even entertaining or creating a new crazy fashion line or whatever it might be. But the average person is still so codependent on whatever business they're working for, but that business is just going to drain you.
And that's the thing, is that for the first time we have options.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that blows me away is that this thing was in my pocket. This thing that's in my pocket has the capability with one app to do what a department of 40 heads 400 years ago, when we started the industrial age, would have been capable of.
Right.
One app can do what a department of 40 people were doing 300 to 400 years ago. So, I mean, it's crazy. That's absolutely mind-boggling to me, of like the options that we have available for people to document firsthand experiences of reality and actually get truth out, so that way we can have open dialogue and narrative, the ability to express ideas and express content and express ourselves.
Yeah. Like,
we live in a society that, thankfully, at least in Utah, before all of these things started happening with 2020, I feel like we've slowly cultivated more of a respect towards self-expression.
Yes.
In
Absolutely.
comparison to where we were like 10 or 20 years ago. And so to be able to not only have cultures that are encouraging and empowering that, but also having the technological and the educational and the reference of online data to literally create any world that we want to. Like
right.
the problem in the past has been we were only allowed so many options. We only have a dollar bill, you don't have trade. Like, well, we are in a world where we can trade. Like, we are in a world where we can actually easily network and find the people that have the skill sets that we need and trade our skill sets for them. That wasn't available like it is now 5-10 years ago. And so if we start actually utilizing these things, if we walk away from the spectator mentality, that's another thing that I feel has been cultivated within our society over the last 40 years specifically, is that we've become the spectators that sit back and go, okay, so who's going to create the option for me? Is it going to be a Hyundai or a Honda who's going to come out with the better thing?
Right.
Is it going to be a Mac or a Windows who's going to come out with the best products? Like, and we've slowly gotten used to the idea that there's only so many options, and we're confined to these requirements of I can work for Maverick or I can work for Guitar Center.
Right.
Like, and it's like, no. Like, you can go out and you can find what makes your heart sing. You can find that skill set, that desire, that emotion, that feeling, that expression that creates value to your life. And you have more than enough online resources. You have more than enough ways to connect with your communities and the individuals around you. And you already have value. You already have skill sets. Every job that we've gone through to get to this point hasn't been for nothing, just like any religion or any experience. Like, everything that we've gone through has created and cultivated the character and the abilities that we have now. Like, I don't consider myself a carpenter, but I've done a lot of carpentry and I could build something.
Right.
Like, that's not the first thing that makes my heart sing, but I have that skill set. And so if me getting to the point where I can do the thing that I really want to do means figuring out how to do carpentry and landscaping for a while just to maintain bills so I don't have to go work for somebody else, maybe that's worth it. Maybe it's worth working for somebody else long enough to get the training so that you can go and do your own thing. But we have a world that has those options for the first time.
So to go off of what you said with this, we've become spectators, do you think that has also inherently made us like less willing to do things ourselves because we're so comfortable and so used to things just coming to us?
Yeah, I think it goes all the way down to the automations in our homes. Yep. In my mind, with the ability to, I need to wash my clothes, I'm going to throw it in this thing, put soap in it and push a button. And they need to dry, I'm going to change it over to this and push a button. I need to wash these dishes, I'm going to put them in this machine and push a button. I want to watch TV, I push a button. I want to go into my car, I push a button to turn my car on now.
Right.
It's like we've created a world where there's no puzzles, there's nothing to interact with really. Like, I've been working slowly trying to allow this concept for a song to cultivate in my head of like creating this song where through the whole thing the lexicon of the grammar makes it seem like you're in a spaceship. And so like to create this like world where it's so subtle that I'm not using actual like very specific terms in order to like tell you what it really is, but just through emotion be like, I'm in this environment and it's unsafe to go outside unless I go into my machine, my other contraption that takes me to where I'm supposed to go, and I need to go to these places to like do these things, but like I need to be careful at the outside and like and just this constant thing. And then at the end of the song make it apparent that like they weren't in a spaceship, they were just in their house, because we've almost completely disassociated from reality in that way. Like we don't wash clothes in rivers anymore. We don't make food probably 40% of the time on average for the average person, if I were to make up a statistic. But like we have all these things that we just take for granted that we've created a world where we have so much time that we literally don't know what to do with it, and we feel like we don't have any time. And so we've given all of our time to other people because they told us that that's the best way to maintain the world where we just have too much time to not know what to do with.
Right.
And it's like, and so I even tried to go to the other side of that extreme, and I lived a whole year without shoes off $3,000, and tried just seeing what it was like to completely disassociate from all of the luxuries and all the normalities of Western culture. And I mean, not wearing shoes, I wasn't allowed into bars, I wasn't allowed into most places, most locations, and so it completely debilitated my ability to rely on corporations.
Right.
It completely debilitated my ability to rely on the lubrication of being able to walk into a store and buy a drink. Like, all of a sudden, everything that was in my back pocket was emergency expense.
Right.
And I needed to figure out how to make food, how to get food. I needed to figure out where I was going to sleep. I needed to keep myself hydrated through the day, and it became a realization that really those are the main priorities of each day.
So doing that mentally, did you feel more rewarded every day? Or did it feel more strenuous to the point where you didn't feel rewarded and wondering why you're doing it?
I would say that feeling went between those two every few hours.
Okay.
Because there would be moments where I would be so stoked that I was able to just sit at a park and just be able to just be luxurious and not have any desire, any like
true peace.
Really no cost. Like being analytical, like when I started learning business, my brain went to like, okay, so how much every day do I cost and how much every day am I making? Because if there's a corporate allocation per day, then there's a corporate profit margin that needs to be made per day. And if I am my own business entity as an individual that's maintaining my own house, my own car, my own phone, and my own life, then I need to think these ways. Right. If I want to stay on top of it and maintain a equanimity long term.
Right.
And so at the time, my cost of living was like $1,300 a month. And so I equated that out and was like, dude, I need to make like $40 to $60 a day.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. like, this is nuts, dude. Like, I take a day off and I'm immediately behind.
Yeah.
Like, I take any personal time, I'm immediately behind. I take a sick day, I'm immediately behind. Like, any variable happens and it's going to take me 3 months to fix my car. It's going to take me 6 months to do this. Like, and as far as like the American dream of like one day having a picket fence, dog, wife, and a couch, like I'm not too far off, and I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in this. And so the year without that, there were moments where like the full brevity of that was completely lifted, and it was like, wow, there's like, I really don't have to worry about any of that right now. Like, that is such a great feeling to not have to worry about any of that. But then 2 hours later, something extreme would happen, and I wouldn't have an ability to rest or wash clothes or anything like that, and I would end up walking around for 6 hours with smelly clothes or something like that, and I would just be I would constantly have to succumb to each moment and just do the best to kind of make it through until the next time that I could recharge and actually take advantage of some of the things, some of the benefits and luxuries of reality again. So so those moments were painful in the other direction of like, how do I, like, am I really okay with this? Do I really want to do this?
So I guess, I mean, I have a lot of questions with that, because not a lot of people do take that step back and try and really, I don't even know what to call it, like, experience life for what it really is. Because I mean, life, our average day, if we're just a middle class working person or a lower middle class or lower class, like, it's pretty universal. We go to work, we get off, we try and spend as much time doing things we want, we go to bed, we wake up and repeat until it's our weekend. And that's why so many people are like dying on Thursday, like, oh my God, is it Friday yet? Like, and it's sad. I mean, honestly, it's sad, because when you see people who are more wealthy, they wake up Mondays and they're like, God damn, it's Monday, I'm pumped. But then for the normal, like the average person, it's like, oh, I guess I gotta go back to work and make that living. So doing that, you said you left yourself, or you did this for a year-long time. Are there things that you still mentally do that you were doing during that time period, or is that all just something that you've learned from and moved on?
No, because so the way that I managed that whole entire system was I actually found local companies and started working with nonprofits.
Okay.
And started leaning sometimes really heavily on community members that were at the forefront of those initiatives. So it was really interesting because, I mean, so for context, before all of this, I mean, I was an introvert, still am an introvert, but from like 18 to like 25, I worked call centers. I sat at a desk for Netflix, Jitterbug, musician's friend, countless.
I did it for Discover, so I
countless companies, and so like I came from that extreme of 7 years of waking up on Monday and just heading to work because I had to. And only living for those 2 days, one that I could be a debauched fully hedonist, and the next day to recover, and then you go back to work.
Right.
And so, like, I did that for a long time, and so, but through that whole entire process, I didn't rely on anything other than corporations. I didn't rely on anything other than what was easily accessible due to the interaction and the transaction I was doing with society. I give you 8 hours of my day, 5 days a week, and you make it easy for me to pretty much succumb to any desire that I have.
Right.
If I want a juice, I can go to a Maverick. If I want a movie, I can go to a theater. If I want a beer, I can go to a bar. Like, and so now, after having both of those experiences, my focus is much more, I mean, also being like, I spent 5 years training to be a pastor in Christianity, and so like the whole idea of like self-deprivation, and I love the ideas of monasteries.
Yeah.
like I absolutely love the idea of like finding a place in the middle of the mountains made out of stone and just a room I could sit in and like just be like, cool, I'm done. But so yeah, like that, through that whole entire thing, like that's where I started learning the self-deprivation and some of the values behind fasting and kind of pushing your body a little bit to the extreme of making it think that it's going, like it needs to go into the sympathetic, and it's in an emergency situation. The ability to go into those physically and maintain a calm composure. Like I was already practicing that within the Christian concept, and then had real life experience back on the street again, and then since then I've kind of tried to find an equanimity between those two of like, I'll go out and buy beer, but I'll only do it once every week to 2 weeks, and it lasts me 3 to 4 days to a week and a half. And like, I'll go out and get fast food, but I also try to work with gardens locally and try to grow as much produce as possible, and try to not just rely on one thing. Like through the reality of the situation is we can't live in a completely sustainable environment locally yet.
No.
Like, we have the system, we live in the system. We don't live in the mountains where we can just go and pick berries and do that. Like, and so there has to be a compromise of interacting with the system, but also learning how to interact outside of the system. And then I think that another interesting strategy is working within the system to try to convert the system. So that's kind of what I'm doing now with my company, is trying to make enough revenue that I can actually sponsor individuals that I see doing things that would greatly support soil amendments within our communities, and getting away from desertification and re-cultivating the land, so that way we can create our own produce, create our own food, and rely on that within ourselves. But also people that want to start local companies that supply a certain option within a city that right now is a monopoly. So that's like someone that wants to create something that only Walmart's selling, kind of thing, and create that new option. Or someone who wants to anything. Like, and so, yeah, so I think, yeah.
I heard this is a little off subject, but still goes along with the creating your own produce. That there was a lady, I believe that she was East Coast, but she had this idea of going to homes, renting out parts of their backyard for whatever the monetary value is, growing her own produce, and then either selling it back to the family they're renting it from or taking it to community centers or different things along that line. And I believe that not only was she making a very heavy profit, but she was feeding, it was like a large number of homeless, vets, different things along those lines who were struggling in that community. And now her name's, going across the nation.
Yeah.
And just things like that are so, I mean, if someone came to my house and was like, hey, could I rent out a chunk of your backyard and grow some vegetables? Yeah, you can do it for free.
Yeah.
I don't care. Here's the door.
Here's actually the thing. I've been working with a group. So there's the Utah Permaculture Collective, which is a group that's been teaching sustainable agriculture just on local levels, just in your backyard. We have started something called the Neighborhood Resiliency Initiative.
Okay.
And that is literally all we're doing.
That's awesome.
Is we have a huge database that we've set up, and you can sign up as between 5 different things. You can be an organizer for your city, you can be a volunteer for the gardens, you can be a donor for land, you can be a resource provider, and you can be a mentor for the volunteers. And so I think it's I'm going to have to give you all these links later.
Oh, yes, please.
Neighborhood Resiliency Initiative. It's like nrislc.com or something like that. But if you look up Neighborhood Resiliency Utah, Neighborhood Resiliency Initiative, you should be able to find it. But yeah, like we've been at it for about, 2 weeks, a month, and I just moved, so I haven't been able to go to be in the Zoom meetings recently, but I'm assuming I wouldn't be surprised if we're 40 gardens in by now, if not more.
That's
So
awesome.
I mean, yeah, if anyone wants to get involved with that on a local level, that's happening right now. We're pushing that as intensely as we can.
Right.
And yeah, it's just it's the reality that if we have monopolies and they fail, we don't have options. So we can't trust systems that only have 2 to 4 options.
Right.
Like just like with the presidential election right now, we can't trust a system that only gives us plastic or paper. I want more options than that. I want the option of being able to just grab my groceries and walk out without either.
No.
Like I want more than just what's being offered. And so if we can get to a point where on local levels we are creating as many options for each other as possible, then we don't need to worry about capitalism. We don't have to worry about fighting against each other as corporations. We can work together and realize, like, I don't need to be the only massage therapist with clients in Salt Lake City. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so for me to push clients that I can't help in that moment to somebody else is not me losing business. Like, that's me supporting my community. Me going and paying someone who teaches me yoga for an hour. I just helped them pay their rent.
Yeah.
I'm maintaining the economic flow within a small bubble instead of just pushing it out and allowing it to disappear. So, and the more that we have that mentality, that's what the year of being shoeless, helping nonprofits, homeless taught me, was the more that we maintain the bubble within our communities, the more we will thrive, because we create a middle class. We create an opportunity for people to live lives where they work the hours they want to work, they have the money to do the things they want to do, and we see the innovations and the expressions and the scientific development and the economic models and the societal normality that cultivates itself through that standard, through that ground level platform. Because if we don't get at the problem by the root, then it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And if we're only looking at defunding the police, if we're only looking at the presidential election, if we're still distracted by Hyundai and Toyota, then we're never going to look at the root.
Right.
The root was 2000 BC, or 1200 BC, when agriculture started and hierarchy started. and the mentality of needing to control started, and normality and systems and creating some symmetry and uniformity in all things. That's when it all started. We changed that, and then that creates the platform for the cultivation of a new worldview where human beings are respected, plants are respected, the earth is respected, and the skill sets and the innovation of the general public, of self-determining, educated individuals, becomes the normality to reality, and we don't need celebrities in one city that everyone's staring at. We have our own.
Right.
We don't need your musicians. We have our own. We don't need your medicines. We're making our own. We don't need your clothes. Like, just get out. Like, we're good. If we need something, we'll go to the other city and we'll ask them. Like,
right.
Leave us alone.
So how do you go to like an individual who is, let's say, we'll use clothes for example, right? And we're like, hey man, we can create clothes for you that are, gonna fit great, they're gonna feel great, they're handmade, they're quality.
Mm.
But they don't have that Gucci on it. They don't have that Prada or whatever the line is. Like, how do you pitch someone who is so stuck in the mindset of, what they see on Instagram and what's popular and what's important to be like, what's the word used nowadays? The clout.
Yeah.
How do you talk to someone like that and really build a personal dialogue with them where they're going to be able to understand, like, hey, you're paying a company because they are very good at advertising themselves. Yeah. You're not buying anything different than what I'm making. I have this is the same product. That might actually be higher quality. It just doesn't have the label.
Yep.
How do you translate that into words of like meaningfulness to someone like that?
I think it's the same thing as politics, religion, and marketing. Like, if we rely on words, then we're relying on the previous system. I think that just the example of life, like walking into a scenario where the first thing out of your mouth isn't, hey, you want to buy my khakis, but your first interaction is honest and genuine. You actually like begin to interact with that individual. Right. And then through those interactions and through creating familiarity, the conversation starts up of, yeah, I'm trying to create more local solidarity. This is my concept. Like, I went to the whatever company and I figured out their design and where they were getting their stuff. I made sure that I got better product. I did it by hand. I guarantee the stitching. Like, I guarantee it's going to be good quality long term. So, and then have that person just inherently be interested. Like, that's the thing, is like, the whole idea of marketing is finding people that need the thing that you have.
Right.
But
it's also,
if we just naturally find the things that we need.
Well, I kind of get where you're coming from as well with the whole, if it's a small community and you're in that bubble and you're able to work with each other, it doesn't even, I guess I'm still in the mindset of thinking like, well, how are you going to be able to make these shirts and survive? But then it's not even about that at that point. It's about getting this shirt to that person because they need a shirt.
Yeah.
And maybe in return they'll give me food or whatever it might be. It'd be an awesome world to live in.
Yeah.
And I see the changes. Like, I mean, I go downtown. I'm not recently, but when I spend time downtown, everyone's a lot more personal. Do you know up by? So if you go near the or if you go down Capitol Road, like you're heading toward like State Street and Main Street, you take a left. There's like a dog park, kind of over by a bunch of
Meadow Grove.
Yeah, Meadow Grove.
Yeah.
There's so many nice people over there now.
Dude, Meadow Grove's great.
There's so many like
Meadow Grove blows my mind every time I come.
I remember going there as a kid, and it was just kind of like,
yeah,
it's a park. You go over there, everyone's talking, everyone's having a good time, it's just.
No, I've been impressed with that place every single time I've gone over the last few years.
I think downtown, like you said earlier too, like, have you been in Utah most of your life?
Yep.
I have too. I don't know our age differences, but when I was, 14, 13, going downtown to the Gateway or whatever it was, like, it wasn't like what it is now. Like, it was very one-dimensional thinking. It was very not open forum. There wasn't art on walls. There wasn't people out there painting these beautiful, I guess tagging these beautiful pieces of art for people. There wasn't music shop like low level music shops opening up. There wasn't all these food options. It was like exactly what you would see on TV. The same exact shops at every mall, the same exact shops downtown. And now we're finally getting to a point. I don't know if it's the progressive influence that's coming from California, or if it's truly people realize that our community wasn't as tight as they want us to believe, and we're just naturally starting to want to build that community.
I don't know.
It's tough. I
don't know, but yeah, I have slowly seen that progression. Because I remember like one time I was down in Portland, and was just chilling at a bar with a bunch of people, and this homeless dude who was very obviously homeless walks up, and every single person knew him by name.
No.
Every single person shook his hand, gave him a hug. Half of them offered him food, and they just started chatting. And I took out my camera and I started to take a picture. And one of the other locals that was sitting at the table with me pushed my camera down. She's like, "What are you doing? That's inappropriate. You don't do that." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. That I've never seen that happen before. I want to encourage people to do this. I have never seen anything like that before in my life.
Me neither.
That is mind-boggling to me right now. I've been homeless. I've been that transient on the side of the street that people walked past. I played guitar for 6 hours and made $20. I've played that game, and that moment, just I started crying. I had to go outside and smoke. Jeez, man, that was a moment in history that I'm never gonna forget. And I'm beginning, especially with the coalitions that have happened recently with the homeless, with the road home shelter closing. I'm beginning to slowly feel that here, slowly begin to see the evolution and the cultivation of that same mentality here in Salt Lake. 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, that, it was not as prevalent. I'm not going to say that it was non-existent, but it was not half as prevalent as it's been over the last while. The stand-up at Washington Park that happened with the road home, there's been community members that have been willing to put themselves on the line and put their everything on the line publicly, and try to do the best they can in these situations that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And that kind of solidarity is just that. I'm encouraged to believe that will slowly permeate into regular life, and I think that's the main point of the coalitions. That's the main point of the initiatives. That's the main point of the current protests, is that when people stand up for somebody else and start advocating for them, I think that the underlying true desire is, I want to make you so aware of this that it changes the way you think at night. I want you to change the way you look at someone when you walk past them on the street, whether they're sleeping in a bag or whether they have different colored skin. You need to personally allow this to interact with your worldview. Right. And come to the realization that this is not just a spectation that you can spectate at. This is a voice that wants to desperately be heard. And if we give credence to that and show respect to it and gain familiarity with it, then we can encounter it the same way that those people in Portland did when that homeless dude walked up, with grace, with dignity, with respect, and with friendship, and with a relationship, and not with guns. Right? Yeah. not with apathy, not with a camera. Yeah. With no other action. We need a culture that goes beyond the interaction at a cashier check lane. We can't play that game on a personal level anymore. It has to become real again.
I think too, I think for me, one thing that I've tried to actively do to better this over the past 5-6 years of my life, because it's always inherently been here in Utah. There's always been hate. There's always been bigotry. It's just underlined. My biggest thing is just trying to learn people's names going out. I think just even that, I mean, it sounds dumb, right? But like even that small effect of like you walk past someone that culturally might be way different than you. What's your name? I'm Wes. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
What are you doing tonight? And not only has that allowed for me to make new friends, but it's shown me so many different perspectives.
Yep.
Which I think is one reason why there's so much problems going on in today's day and age is people don't have vast amounts of perspectives. They just have their narrow view of what they've been doing.
Yep.
And does that go back to corporation, that they're stuck and unable to spend the time to go and learn those perspectives? Maybe. But it's such small, easy steps, if you really think about it, that can vastly change how we interact with each other.
Yeah, and for some reason, at least, and I'm speaking completely personally now, is for some reason I feel like I've been ingrained with this just negative outlook on that. Like I can't tell you how many times in public I've had anxiety attacks where I completely shut down and I'm not able to interact. I don't know what to say.
Right.
Like every single thing that comes to mind of what could be said in any discussion or interaction is completely just stupid and worthless. Like, and it's not worth saying. So I just sit there and don't say anything because I don't know what to say. And
right.
And like, yeah, but and so that actually goes into an interesting thing, because for me personally, that's the only thing that I've been able to find that counteracts that is the idea of cultivating the moments before they happen. So, and for me, that's become the premise of my idea of self-care, is the idea of like coming to this podcast today is woke up this morning and thought, okay, so in order to be in the mindset to be able to talk the way that I want to talk and be able to think about the things that I want to be able to think about and react quickly and concisively and be able to use good grammar, I need to go through this repetition that I go through each day of making this type of food in the morning and taking these supplements and doing this yoga and eating this other types of food and to be honest, the minute I woke up, I didn't want to do any of that. Right. All day I haven't wanted to do anything. And so just intentionally focusing in and going, okay, like this is like, in order to be the person that is capable of doing the things that I want to do in that moment, and that actually, interestingly enough, for me, really symmetrically interacts with free will and predestination in Christianity. So like Pelagianism and Augustinianism or Calvinism and Arminianism, the whole idea of does God predestine everything and that's the way that he can prophesy things, is because everything's already written out and we're just players in a play thinking that we're making our own choices, but every single choice was already known, and that's kind of the only way that I see God being able to tell you what's going to happen in the future is if he actually knows. But then Arminianism is the opposite thought of we have free will, every single option that we creates, or every single option that's available in a moment creates a branch of possibilities. I mean, if you want to get into quantum physics, that's creating parallel worlds at that point. And there's a version of you, like in the quantum concept, there's a version of you within which each one of those realities that chose one of those other options, and now that reality just kind of branches out. But staying further into Orthodox Christianity, we can, like, the idea is that God is kind of up in heaven and he's watching all of these branches of these tendrils of these roots of possibilities playing out, and he's watching these little dots of each person going through and making those choices as they're going through those choices, and he kind of has to like twist the branches as he knows that they're going to happen in order to create prophecies. Which is so not giving credence to either one of those, but looking at it from a practical perspective of if I had not done any of those things to prepare for this, would I be able to react the way I am right now?
Right. Would you have been able to even want to get up enough to come do the show?
Exactly.
No, I get where you're going with the comparisons that, and I agree with you in a sense that for me myself, like I try to not be routine because for some reason for me routine freaks me out. I don't know why. I feel like if I'm in too much of a routine that my life will slowly just start becoming the same day over and over like a groundhog.
Yep.
But at the same time, when I'm the most productive is when I follow schedules.
Yep.
When I follow things, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the Christianity thing. You said you spent 5 years practicing to become a priest or a pastor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to get into religion talk because I know that it's for some people it's touchy, some people it's not. Is it something that you stopped pursuing because of different viewpoints, or is it something that I'm just curious because I religion for me, to give my background, I'm not religious. I don't give myself a title of atheist because I'm not anti anything. I believe people should be able to do anything they want that makes them happy. But I wasn't raised religious, and I've never had a religious experience where I thought like, okay, well maybe there is something. So I love hearing perspectives that either from people who are formerly religious or currently religious that kind of has turned them into who they are today.
Yeah. So I would say that so for a full background, I was raised Mormon. Had a moment at 12 years old where I had a conversation with my bishop at the time, and he walked me through Spencer W. Kimball's Miracle of Forgiveness and was like, here's the 5 steps of becoming clean and repenting of sin. And analytically I went home, and so I did a test, and I wrote out 3 pages with 56 lines down. I remember because I was counting the lines consistently, but 3 pages front and back within this binder, 56 lines, a sin per line, and then I had to write down everyone that I affected directly, and then I had to write down everyone that was affected not indirectly. So those are the first 3, and then the 4th step was I had to atone to everyone on my list. At the very least, call them and say that I was sorry. And then the 5th step was don't do it again. And so I went through this list of front and back 56 lines down on both sides and thought to myself, there is no practical way I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Like every time I sin, I have to do this.
Right.
Like this is the expectation of one of our prophets based on one of his books that he published. Okay, I'm done then. And I just kind of, and like that really screwed my mentality, because at that point it was like, well, God hates me because I can't atone. What do? I'm already baptized. I'm screwed, man. Like, that's it. Game over. And so by 16, I wasn't going to church anymore. 18 to 20, I went on a binge, a homeless binge with a lot of drugs, and made a lot of stupid choices. And then 20 years old, I had this crazy moment in a jail cell, and walked out of it and had 7 felonies dropped down to 3 misdemeanors, and walked into a church 2 weeks later. And a pastor was up at the front talking about being born again and how your world changes and all this stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm sober and I'm not withdrawing, and like something changed, something happened. Like, I don't know what it was, but yeah, like
it clicked.
Let's do something about it. So, but I immediately went straight into the doctrine. The very next day I sat down with this kid and we went through the Bible for 3 hours. Like literally just sat down and just went through verses, and I tested every single question that I had at the time against him. And by the end of that, he had been trained well enough through being able to give that kind of presentation that it all made sense. And it was like, cool, like this is great. I'm going to sign up for this. Like, how could I be the most effective in this? And it's like, well, I love studying, I love doctrine, I love learning things, like, and then I love helping explain things in practical ways to people. So that's what that dude up there is doing. So how do I become that dude? And because that's where I could be the most effective.
Right.
And so I spent the next 5 years in doctrine. And the further into the doctrine that I got, the more I started watching the fruit of the seeds that I saw planted in the church. The first thing that started like, well, let's not go into that. I started seeing things that I didn't agree with,
Right.
and doctrine and problems in the historical records, things about the actual anthropology and the history of the church from Constantine through the Crusades, through all these different things, and the way that we were purporting and just everything. I found things that I didn't agree with, and I had to walk away.
Right.
So, but now whenever I talk to people about religion, the thing that catches me is like, I mean, I studied apologetics, I studied all kinds of things. Like, I read through the whole Bible 7 times through in 5 years, and now I get stuck on Genesis 3. Like, each time that I try to study, each time that I try to work on within that realm of and that lexicon, I always end up getting stuck on Genesis 3, because in Genesis 3, God creates Adam, and then I like sometimes imagining narrative and dialogue of what's happening in that moment when I'm reading the Bible. It's helped internalize and personalize the moments more clearly.
Okay.
Thinking about it in real time and thinking about what could have, like, how that situation could have actually played out. So, like, imagining Adam standing there, and then God says, all right, dude, like, we're going to go and we're going to say the names of everything I just made in the last, like, so many days, man. Like, I've been at it, bro. Let's go. So, like, they go through, and there's some theologians that will encourage the idea that the whole world was the Garden of Eden.
Right. That
in order to have a perfect environment for Adam and Eve within that garden, you would have to have that permeate throughout the whole ecosystem. And so the idea that the whole world was this ecotopia of just beautiful, pure, fresh,
just
oxygenated world with no chemicals, no toxins, no synthetics, nothing polluting. Like it was just natural systems all the way through. And the idea that Adam was able to just go through and say the names of everything, like possibly things that we still haven't found under microscopes, he could have been allowed an opportunity to become acquainted with. And then after this whole process, God sits down with him, and once again, imagining narrative, I can see God saying, okay, so what was all that for? That possibly took a long time to do.
Right.
that possibly like was like multi-day backpacking trip, like 2-week, 4-week excursion. Like Pacific Coast Trail means nothing compared to this concept. Yeah. So at the end of the whole process, I can imagine God sitting down and saying, what did we learn? And Adam goes, the names of everything, right? And God goes, yes, and what is a name? What is my name to you? An opportunity for friendship, an opportunity for an acquaintance. What is someone else's name to you? An opportunity for a familiarity, an opportunity for a relationship, an opportunity for time investment. And so now you know the names. Now you can cultivate that. That's your job, Adam. You cultivate that. You cultivate those names. You cultivate the relationships. You cultivate experience, not just interactions, experience. Right. Not 10 seconds, not 10 minutes, not 15 minutes. You can actually interact and live and experience and be with this creation. This is your purpose. This is why I created you. This is why I created all of it. And then Eve steps into the story, and then the snake steps into the story, and then the apple steps into the story. But before any of that drama in the biblical narrative begins, there's a moment that I get stuck at every time I open the Bible and I try to read anything, and I look at that verse and I think that, like, this should be the first thing we talk about. This should be the first thing that is encouraged within Christianity, especially now where we have a virus that was, I mean, we could argue engineered by Mother Nature.
Right.
given the perfect petri dish of an opportunity to create and cultivate this virus, nature created it. And now we as a whole entire world are interacting with this. And so to me, that's nature calling out and saying, I need you to pay attention. I need you to learn my name again. I need you to learn your anatomy. I need you to learn nutrition. I need you to learn ecology. I need you to get back to the roots of soil and learn what good, healthy soil means. And if you're not going to do that, then I'm going to get your attention. Right. It's the same thing with George Floyd. We need justice. We need equality. We need equal punishment for action, both for the police and for general civilians. If someone does something, they should be treated the same in that situation as someone else who does that same action, who is not directly of the same descendants, that is not directly like even though there's variables between these two, if these two people are doing the same thing, they need to be treated the same way if they're breaking the law. First, and then second, if a cop oversteps bounds, that needs to be addressed immediately. And so it's the same thing with nature, it's the same thing with the protests, it's the same thing with each other in our interactions on an individual level. It's the constant cry of, look at me, I'm not just the cashier, I'm not just the plumber, I'm not just the store clerk, I'm not just behind the counter, I'm a human being. I have emotion. I am reactionary to my environments. The earth is screaming this out. Like, people of diversity are screaming this out. And I feel like everyone in a way has had an opportunity to feel it through the last quarantine of knowing what it's like to want to desperately need to be expressive and have someone there to do it with. And so if we start interacting with all levels of reality with that mentality. To me, it's animism. The basis of my platform for my own personal worldview is the concept that every single level of this reality has a level of, because it interacts with reality, has a level of consciousness. So my pancreas could feel a certain way, and if I'm aware of what my pancreas feels like, I can tell if it's starting to feel a certain way. I don't have to wait for the symptoms. I can know what health feels like on a more vital level and valued level than just driving around a car or a body that's just waiting to break down. Right. And so if the pancreas gets angry enough, the whole system's aware of it. But the pancreas might have been quite aware of itself long before the rest of the system was aware. And so if you treat that as its own conscious thing that you can connect with and interact with, and then you look at the same thing with a plant and be like, you actually grow. You're determined by the things in your soil and the air and the water and the heat that you get. This is and talk about sheep and the whole concept of sheep is someone who's completely has to succumb to the environment. Right. They don't have a way to defend themselves. If a sheep is defenseless, what is a tomato plant? It can't even move. So if we're not if we don't even take the time to try to interact with that and figure out what it actually needs to grow well, I mean, that is the most defenseless of all creation that I've been able to find, that exhibits the most beauty when you actually take the time to cultivate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Gotta say, that whole thing was so well put. I mean, it really... it's emotional to hear someone talk who actually isn't talking from something to benefit.
Yeah.
You're literally just saying what needs to be heard.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is at the end of the day, whether everything burns in a lake of fire like the Bible talks about, or as we had the washing with the flood, now we have the burning, or if we go into a sustainable ecological system that maintains our world, Like, we really have two options. We either burn it all down and allow it all to pollute and just become completely worthless, or we revitalize it, regenerate it, and become a garden again. But the great thing about both of those realities is that in either one, there's no desk with a plaque. No one in the end will take credit. No one in the end will be able to take full credit. Like, both of those are culminations of so many actions done by so many individuals that not one person will ever be able to then say at the end that they sat on the top of the statue and was revered. And so wanting self, it there's no need for self at that point to a degree. The whole idea of a company is to get you to believe their mission, right?
Right.
The whole idea of religion is to believe the mission, right? If you have your own mission, then you can get out of the way.
That's so true.
And if the mission isn't yourself, and the mission is just to create something that you see as valuable, that's what missionaries do. That's what people who go around door-to-door sales. Yeah. That's what all the companies have been doing. That's what all these people have, that's the whole marketing agenda. Is go out and share the worldview, because the more people that believe our worldview, the more people that will act accordingly to that. So teach people that they need Apex. Teach people they need Vivint. Teach people they need Christ. Teach people they need Buddha. Create the codependency. Let's continue this process, right? But to actually sit down and be do it yourself. Learn how to do it yourself. Empower yourself. Level up in reality. Figure out how to make your reality better. How does your psychology associate with your nutrition? How does your lifestyle associate with your mental psyche? How does, what is the congruencies of your reality that are tangible? How do they interact with each other? How do they intertwine? How do you benefit that system? What needs to go? What needs to be added in? The simplest way to say it is, if we take the mentality away from, I need to help a corporation make a lot more money off of what I do for them than they're going to give me, to the idea of how much could I support myself long term by creating the infrastructure for myself that company capitalized on and then fired me because I finished the job and I made whatever they needed made to capitalize on that situation. I was a cog in the machine. What if I created my own machine? I know what the machines look like from the inside because I've worked for them. So let's create it for myself. Yes, initially you'll put in 80 hours a week.
Sure.
And you won't make any money. But that's the problem. But that's the thing, is that company, the CEO of that company put in those 80 hours a week until he was able to employ you.
Yeah.
And so the long-term investment of and that's what I'm saying with the compromise of living within the current system is you can't just jump straight into it. Take the slow approach if you need to. If you can and you have the balls to, I encourage it. But if you it's okay to figure out how to make a product that is valuable to your community and work for Amazon on the side, and then get to the point where you're making enough income here that you can tell them you need to go part-time. But guess what? Now you've actually got some traction here. So if they go, well, the only way you're valuable is if you're full-time, we have to fire you. If you want to go part-time, then you can go, fine. And now you're at least here.
Yeah.
You're not at the bottom. You can at least have a platform to begin growing from. So cultivate it like a plant. Cultivate yourself like a plant. Cultivate skill sets like plants, and start watching the slow growth. And it's not just based on the green that you see from the top. It's based on the root structure that's maintaining your soil or your platform on which you're working on. And the sturdiness of how far you can go long term. Don't just worry about how good you look on Facebook. Grow true interactions and true relationships with people that are within your close circle, and build clientele and build your rapport and build a reference point within the community of an option. So,
and I think too, going along with this, that the reason why we don't see it as often, it happens a lot. People do self-employ and create their own machine, as you put it, I think why a lot of people fail is the mindset that is told to us nowadays. Everything's instant, like we were talking about earlier. Like, you push your car now, like you take the washing machine to the dryer, like everything's just instant. So I think people are just so used to instant that when they try and sit down and like, okay, well, how do I start my car washing business?
Yep.
Okay, well, step one is, well, I gotta allocate some time. Okay, well, that's gonna be hard. Okay, well, now I have to sacrifice my weekends. Do I want to do that? And I feel like when people aren't getting that immediate satisfaction, they give up too easy. Because, like, for example, I'll use this podcast as a prime example. Like, you know, I've been doing it for 2.5 years. I had a co-host at the start. There's been a lot of times where I'm like, I look at numbers. I think everyone does it who's trying to reach an audience or trying to help people. Like, it's like, man, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I wasting my time, or am I, you know, is this really gonna pan out for me?
Yeah.
But then something like today, talking with you, or last night I streamed playing a game at like 9 o'clock at night. There was these 2 individuals who came in and watched. They were fucking awesome. They were like some of the nicest people. They were sitting there like complimenting me and, you know, saying, oh yeah, the game's cool, like all this type of stuff. And it's just like little interactions with that. And I think people skip over the small things in life.
Yep.
Like when you're building something, like, you know, and you have a day where it's just a shitty day, it's a hard day, it's rough, you worked 10 hours, now you have to come home and work 10 more on your craft, and then, you know, where in that shitty day was the small thing that was fucking awesome? And I think people skip over that, and when they skip over that too many times, they don't feel like they're getting that satisfaction and that gratification of like accomplishing a goal, because the small things don't matter to them. Yeah. That's one of the things that I've tried to really change in my life, is because when I was younger, I always felt like, oh, I need the big thing. I need like the success. I need to see this thing or that thing. But then I would realize, like, it's a weird thing. It kicked on me, like, one day I have this friend named Clinton, who I don't talk about on here a lot, but he's one of the greatest people that's ever affected my life and changed my perspective on things. And we used to work at Domino's Pizza together, just like a silly job. And do you know Bountiful at all?
Yep.
So Domino's used to be at Dick's Market.
Yep.
Up on Orchard Drive. And one night we were super busy. He went over and got drinks, and he came back, and he's like, they're kind of warm though. I'm like, oh, it's okay. And he's like, I'll be back. He goes and grabs some ice, and he comes back and he puts ice in the drink, and he's like, it's the small things in life that matter, like ice in your drink. And I sat there for a second. I'm like, oh, whatever. And I took a drink. I'm like, that was really good.
Yep.
And that was the highlight of the night. And I remember that over like the 5 years that I worked there.
Yep.
And, you know, and I think people, if you're listening to this, I think that if you sit back and if you're having such a bad day and you really think about what's going on, there's that small thing there that you can really take away and be like, you know what, today really wasn't that bad.
Yeah. I mean, I've really enjoyed studying worldviews and philosophies and stuff like that. And so the holographic universe idea, mm-hmm. that everything's just chips, like creating
right.
holograms and shit, like that's a fun thing to play with. But when I was playing around with that mentality, I was like, well, if it's all just like an automated video game kind of thing, like that means there's like golden eggs, right? Like, what if there's a golden egg per day? What if, like, I just need to find the golden egg that day, like, and just like be aware enough to like catch that moment that makes the day worthwhile? And so I kind of like tricked myself into looking for that each day. Of like, through the day, I'd be like, I haven't had my golden egg yet, universe. Like, I'm waiting for that.
Where
like,
are you at?
And then like all of a sudden there'd be an amazing sunset, and it'd be like, there it is. Like that's it. Or like sitting outside and a huge butterfly flies by, or like a huge bird flies by, or like something like that happens. And it's just and honestly, the golden eggs that I've had recently it's always nature.
Yeah.
Like I go outside and I see something real crazy, like squirrels doing something, or it's fun.
Yeah. No, it is. And I wonder if I agree with you. Like a couple mornings ago, I was driving to work, and you know, I was pissed, not pissed off. I'm like, oh, another day of doing work I don't want to do. I wish I could stay home and work on what I want to work and whatever. And I pulled up some parking lot, and I was sitting in my car, and I'm like, ugh. And I look over, and like the sun wasn't quite coming up yet, but it had turned the sky like this purple pink. And I sat in my car and I just looked at it for like, I was late to work. I showed up 5 minutes late to our morning meeting or whatever. I'm like, why are you late? I'm like, I was out in my car, lost track of time, you know? And like, I
didn't sleep much last night.
Don't worry about it. But the golden egg thing, I think, is true. Like, you could have as bad of a day as you want, but there's always something that can change it. There's always, even if it's something dumb like a sunrise or a sunset, or, you know, I think people take for granted how beautiful just visually looking at something is. Not only like finding an awesome person, or, you know, reading a piece of literature that changes your whole entire life, or listening to a song that you all of a sudden listen to 45 times that day and you're like, I can't even comprehend everything that this song's trying to say. Like, I think that really, for me, is self-help and has really progressed me to become not only more aware of like what I want in life, but to give me a form of satisfaction in a world where if you aren't going out to find it, it's kind of hard to get.
Yep.
And I think that trying to spread that message to people seems easy, but I just don't know. I don't know how to tell someone like, hey, take 5 minutes of your day, go outside, go for a walk.
The way that I articulate it is you have dirt magic and you have McDonald's magic.
Okay.
So McDonald's, if I'm hungry, I could go over to McDonald's and in 3 minutes have a McDouble in my hand, right?
Right.
If I'm hungry and I just have dirt and seeds, in order to get something to grow out of the ground, it could take 2 weeks, it could take 2 months, it could take 3 years with some plants.
Right.
And so, like you were saying before we started the podcast, of like, or maybe during, but the difference between buying produce from a store and actually eating the produce that you grew and took out of the ground and ate for yourself, like there's a huge difference between those two, and it goes directly into the immediate gratification thing of like, I mean, that's been the hedonistic tendency that we've been taught as a society, is that if it's not immediate, then I need to find a faster option.
Right.
and everything is paramount that I can maintain a fast schedule because I need to get back to work.
Right.
And so, like, having that mentality of like, and allowing that to permeate into regular life, and like your question of like, how do people create the mentality to become the business owners that can slowly grow a business and grassroot it long term? To me, that's a good first practice, is like, through your day, ask the question, like, when you have a dish full of sinks, or a sink full of dishes,
right.
and you have an option of, do I put all of these in the dishwasher, or I do it by hand? To me, it's like, well, one's McDonald's, happens quick, it's real easy, I can just jump straight back into the other thing that I do. The other thing is dirt.
No.
Like, it's meditative, it's deliberate, it takes time. You know, I'm going to have to siphon and allocate through the rest of my day so that I can actually do this. I need to consider the amount of energy that I'm going to be putting into this. Like, well, washing dishes, but like going out and landscaping, or doing a bigger project, or like even different forms of self-care for me. I think about it as, do I have the energetic investment to do this and then be accountable for the rest of my day? Like, can I do a hardcore workout for 45 minutes and still show up for the thing I'm going to show up for 2 hours from now?
Right.
And so that slow dirt magic teaches the idea of allocating overall investment, not just financially, but time. Like, one of my favorite verses in the Bible that I still think about a lot is the verse that talks about the man that starts building the tower in the middle of the city, and then he gets halfway through the tower and he realizes he doesn't have any more money, he doesn't have any more resources, and he can't finish his tower. And now this thing that was meant to be this grand form of like expression,
right,
is now half finished and is in direct view of everyone, and they all can see that he wasn't even able to finish the one thing that he was trying to do. And so, thinking about it from that perspective of like, cultivate slowly starting to cultivate the mentality of understanding investment and taking in a full account of that investment.
Right.
And for me, the small practices through my day have turned into sitting down and deciding, do I want to write a CD? I want to write some songs and come out with a thematic theme album. And instead of just sitting down and being like, okay, I'm going to write the first song right now, because I feel it, and all that stuff, I'll sit down and I'll actually go, okay, so what's the overall general theme? What am I going to do here? Create a story plot for the whole entire concept beforehand, and then sit down and actually look at it and go, okay, that's going to be 3 months worth of stuff. I'm going to have to contact 4 people and get them to collaborate, because I can't do the things that they can do. I'm going to have to do all of these other processes. Here's the possible economic cost that this could turn into. Here's the full-time investment cost that I'm looking at. And then a lot of my projects at that point, I'll keep all of that data and I'll just file it and go, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. And so I'm not even going to start it. Even though I've got all the lyrics going through my head and I could write all the chords out right now, I'm not even going to touch it until it's time. And it's difficult. It's really, really difficult, but it helps me strategize per day, because that's the other side of independent entrepreneurship that I found, is that the biggest fear is building up enough traction to be stable, right? Mm-hmm. What do you do when you have so much traction that you're overwhelmed? When do you start, how you think it's difficult finding clientele? It's even harder to say no to them once you have them, because you just don't have the bandwidth to deal with it. And so per week I'll sit down and go, okay, I can do this many massages, I can do this many videos, I can do this much time journalism, I can do this much time researching distillation and figuring out how to make oils and stuff. And I'll allocate through and be like, okay, this is my bandwidth. And once I hit my bandwidth, I start telling people no, and I start scheduling for the next week.
Right.
And it's extremely helpful to be able to really sit down and be like, okay, if I'm going to do this much this day, I'm going to need 4 hours this day to recuperate from that. And so I can't schedule. Once I get booked, I gotta stretch it.
It's so interesting hearing you explain that, because of even what you said earlier, a lot of, you were talking about your pancreas, and you're able to, your whole body, you kind of, it seems like you know it more than I think an average person knows their body, and being able to know, okay, well, if I do 4 massages today, I'm going to need time to recover. And I wish that I could get to a point like that, because that's the biggest problem that I have, is I don't say no to projects or time, because I think I'll just fit it in, and then I end up half-assing it. Yep. Either I'm tired or exhausted, or I'm double booked, or I did this thing or that thing or this thing or that thing, and I'm then at the end I feel shitty because I may have not burnt a bridge, but maybe I weakened a bridge with someone that I wish I wouldn't have.
Exactly.
And I think that was that something that clicked in your mind, that it's just that you need to really be realistic with your time, or is it more along the lines of trial and error?
Well, so that's the thing, is 7 years of sitting behind a computer making money for corporations, and then jumping from that reality into a world where I was just barefoot with $3,000. I went from wishing that I had community around me, and wishing I had people around me, and wishing that I had things to do, to being offered 3 to 4 projects a day because I wasn't charging anything.
Right.
And so that, I went to the other extreme of exactly what you're talking about. I would just fit in 15 things in one day, and then I'd fit in 15 things for the next day, and I would get a 7-hour window for sleep, and I'd wake up completely exhausted and overwhelmed and just angry.
Yeah,
and I'd go through the rest of the day, and everything could have been a lot better had I actually given myself enough breathing room. But in a weird way, I think that for me, it was that presupposition of lack. the idea that not just like that's instilled, I think, economically through minimum paying wage jobs, but it had also permeated into social life for me of like I'm always alone. The people that I'm interacting with are just people that sit next to me at the call center.
Right.
Like I don't actually have any real interactions. I don't really have anyone who really cares. And so walking into a world where all of a sudden a lot of people wanted my time and wanted me around because I was willing to put in effort and put in time, like I was almost like, and in a weird way the deprivation came in as well, where it was like if I deprive myself by always taking advantage of the opportunities, then I'll always be part of the group and I'll be in the community and I'll be able to hang out and I'll be cool and I'll be invited and I'll be a part of the whole entire thing. But if I and I saw this in Christianity too, if I take a break and I don't come for a little while, like I might not be invited next time. If I don't help this person, then they might not want to be my friend. Like if I don't do these things, then I'm not going to get the conditional responses that I expect, because there is no such thing as unconditional love.
Right.
Like I have to be good enough to receive. And so if I don't sacrifice, then I won't be worthy of the recipients of whatever I've done. And so I went to the extreme of just pushing myself as hard as I could every day, like harder than I ever done for any corporation. And I wanted to make that a point of I'm going to work harder for free with the mentality that I'm on a job right now than I ever did for anyone making money. And I'm going to teach myself that, and I'm going to instill that within myself through this experience. And so, but then by the end of it, I was left with the realization that I had completely gone into the masculine mentality of analytics, strategy, and move as quick as you can, get as much done, and just rock as hard as you can, and completely walked away from all femininity of self-care, right, self-worth, self-value, self-determination, being self-conscious, all these different things. I was literally distracting myself through all of that and ignoring everything that was going on. And so when I came to that realization, I was like, okay, so I need to figure out what the body actually needs. And that's when I went into massage school. And that's when I started studying anatomy and started going into all those things. And that's slowly evolved into, I was doing agriculture and permaculture before, but it's really broadened the perspective of ecology the more that I've interacted with anatomy, even with clients today. So
how did you... it sounds really weird, but like, I feel like we're having a podcast to people, but you're giving information that I need so bad right now in my life. I think that's just, I think everyone could use this information.
Yeah.
How did you find that balance of staying that masculine, like still push for things and still want to achieve, success that you feel is worthy? I mean, because success is so many different things. Success isn't money. Success isn't power. Success isn't strength. Success is subjective, to the person. But at the same time, like having that other side of it where you are self-aware, you're self-conscious, you're not self-conscious, you're conscious, you're doing those things. Like that's where, in my personal life, and I'm sure a lot of people's, like, I struggle with those balance because I feel like I can't do both well enough. I have to either sacrifice one or the other, and I don't know. Maybe that's what I have to do.
So, as far as like self-determination and being self-motivated, a moment comes to mind of I think it was like 6 months into I quit Netflix and decided to go as a self-independent contractor within the audiovisual community. And it was about 6 months into that decision, and I was really not doing well because I had no rapport. I knew that I knew the anatomy of the systems and the signal flow, especially of audio, but I didn't know any vernacular because I was self-taught. I didn't know how to speak within that industry and actually express what I actually knew how to do. And so, and all the jobs that I could get was just like grunt work, truss, deck, playing that game. And so, and I've got a bad back. I'm not like, I've never really been in the best physical condition during this life, but so I was really trying to go and work 8, 10, 12 hours working extreme manual labor, and then have to turn around and do it again, and still only being paid like $15-20 an hour. It's like, dude, like I was sitting at a desk comfortably at Netflix. Why am I doing this? This is stupid. Right. And so after about 6 months of that, I remember specifically in my car, I was at a red light and I checked an email, and I was on Craigslist constantly every single day, just finding different companies. I had all these, like, I had this technique where you can't actually talk to the company on site, but if someone is a representative of a company on site, I would just write down the name of the company on their thing. I would just make a note in my phone, and then I'd go home and find them online and throw them a resume. Yeah. Like, I didn't poach you on site, like, but I know that you're here now, so I want to work with you.
Right.
And so I had like 4 or 5 emails from Craigslist and from companies that I was going for, and all of them were saying no. Every single one of them were like, yeah, we're just not interested. And I had no jobs lined up. And I was already in extreme pain, and I didn't know what I was doing. I remember sitting at that light and going, you know what? I don't even care. I'm going to get on Facebook. I'm going to go home. I'm going to buy McDonald's. I'm going to veg out. I'll go find a job in 3 days. Like, I'm done with this. This is stupid. I can't do this. This is way too hard. This is just ridiculous. Like, the amount of time it's going to take for me to even get enough rapport behind my name to actually work within this industry and do the things that I know how to do is going to take years. I don't want to do that. This is dumb. I'm just going to go get a call center job again. And I remember sitting there and thinking, if I do the same thing and expect different results, it's insanity. I can't do that. And so am I really willing to go back? Like, count the real cost here. How high is that tower? Do you really want to make that decision? How difficult is it to get back on Craigslist right now and try again? This is not a problem. This is a puzzle. This is a step. It's difficult. It's strenuous. It will pass. What are you going to do with it, though?
Right.
Are you going to step up and do it? You're 6 months in. Is it worth it? Or is it worth it to sit at a desk again? Right. What do you really want to do right now? And I got back on Craigslist, and I kept on looking, and I kept on pushing, and I, like, every single day. And was it perfect? No. At one point, I spent 2 months building mobile housing because I just could not find any contracts. And so I went back to a full-time job for a period of time. So yeah, so as far as like pushing yourself in that way, but balancing it with the feminine, I mean, that's what I'm still learning now is, and I think that the most empowering thing within that realm for me has been beginning to understand what things do. Like what a tomato does inside of you, what an apple does inside of you, what the chemical compounds and what the nutritional response, and like, and just figuring out basic things like fruit activates your digestion. So for someone who has problems eating because of stresses and anxiety like I do, I try to make a shake in the morning with fruit. With protein, so that way I can get protein in my system. I've got some supplements that I'll take, like fish oil, and I activate my digestion. I know that that's true. That happens. Like, that is a real thing that happens. And so by the end of the day, like today, I'm hungry now, which is exactly the response I expected from that equation.
Yeah.
So learning what the variables do, and then internalizing that, so that when you go, my gums are bleeding. I smoke cigarettes, and so my gums will bleed. I'll gurgle salt water. It closes the gums. It stops the bleeding. And then I'll do coconut oil to pull the oil, or to like do oil pulling, like,
right.
And like knowing how to react to stimuli, like, and being educated and empowered to know what those reactions are going to do. If you know CPR, you can save someone's life. If you know what coffee does in your system, you can use it correctly. If you know what alcohol does to your system, you can use it correctly. If you understand the purposes and the intentions of these things that we're ingesting or that we're doing daily, or activities that we're putting our bodies through and the way that it's affecting us long term, if we are aware of those things, and if we have the schema in our neural pathways in the frontal lobe to build enough habits to habituate those things and create healthy habits, then we become the self-determining adults that can stand up and say that we don't need to be policed as hard. We don't need to be so codependent on the systems. We can be self-reliant, we can be self-valued, and we can find something in life that means more to us than the current system that we're enveloped in.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to respond to you, because it's so mind-boggling to me, because if you don't go out and search for this type of information, you're never going to hear it.
Yeah.
You're never going to hear it, because corporations don't want you to hear it.
Exactly.
You know,
it's not marketable.
Government doesn't want to hear it.
It's not marketable to get on someone's media feed and say, hey, you could do it yourself, Like,
yeah.
Stop relying on everybody else. Stop waiting for options. Stop spectating. Like, learn what these things are. Take the time. You have the resources. And that's the thing that blows my mind, is that we don't know how long these resources are going to be available.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you were affected, but it was 2 or 3 nights ago. There's a rumor that there was an AWS server that started glitching out all the streaming services.
Oh, yeah.
Monday, because I was helping out with the stream for the Michael the Mayor campaign. My friend's running for county mayor,
awesome.
michaelthemayor.com. And we were trying to push through the stream the same way that you were just doing, and it wouldn't go. And so we were able to push through Facebook Live. But yeah, I heard even Netflix was affected by that they weren't able to stream for a period of time. So, I mean, that's the thing, is that counting full cost, there's so many variables in the world right now. The amount of resource that even YouTube is right now, we don't know how long that's going to last. Yeah. We don't have control of that domain. We don't have control of those platforms, Facebook, Twitch, all these things. Like, we don't know how long we can get this, how long the ability to get this information out is going to be allowed to us.
Right.
Like, especially after COVID, man, like, we have no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah, we really don't.
No clue.
They could shut.
So
not only that, but they could shut everything down if they wanted to.
Yep.
That's the thing that scares me the most, is if there came to a point where it really was like, hey, we're taking control. Speaking like the government point of view,
yeah,
we're taking control. What's the first things they're going to get rid of?
Like, man?
They're going to get rid of the things that allow for you and I to sit down and talk about how there's other options.
Yep.
They don't want that out there.
Yep.
I hope to everything that is out there in the world that doesn't ever come to, to be. I hope it doesn't get to that boiling point, but at the same time,
we don't know.
We don't know.
We have no clue.
I mean, that goes back to kind of what you're saying, like, if everything is predestined, or it isn't, I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this, but at the end of the day, like, we could walk outside and everything could just end.
Yep.
We don't know.
Yep.
And
we take so many things for granted.
Yeah.
The fact that the sun will rise.
Yeah.
The fact that water will hydrate us.
Yeah, we're lucky.
The fact that air allows us to breathe. Like, there are so many variables that every single day we just like, oh yeah, that just happens. And it's like, bro, like, you realize we're on a rock that's flying like 700 kilometers like a second or something like that, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah.
But like we don't even know where the Earth is, like where the sun is headed.
No.
Like, the sun is flying. Like, we don't know where anything's going.
And then we have to really rely on this invisible thing called gravity.
Exactly.
From us not flying up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is weird when you sit back and think. Sorry, let me mute that. I don't know who's trying to bother me right now, but it's not important. Yeah, I mean, we take for granted sunrise and everything, but at the same time, like, I think we take for granted people.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think that I don't know. There's not awesome people like we were talking about when you first came in. There's not awesome people, but there are really some great human beings out there trying their best to allow for everyone to just be happy. And it sucks that we still don't live in an environment where that's pushed, but something that isn't important, like I don't want to shit talk anybody or anything they're doing, but something that is dumb as a Prada bag will be millions of views on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
But someone giving advice on how to live life will get 2 people. But as long as those 2 people, it affected them.
And that's the thing, is like that, to me, that's the grassroots idea of just like, what is the true value? Is it the interaction that you're going to have, like those 2 guys that you were gaming with, or is it the ability to hit a huge mass amount of people at once?
Right.
So, and that's the thing, is like, to me, community, I see community as a 3-fold purpose, right?
Okay.
And being an introvert and an analytic, I've kind of had to like think through these things to justify like even continuing to interact with people. But with community, I see 3 different things happen. We unlock things for each other. Throughout interactions like this, we unlock the schema of past experiences,
right,
and past research and past education that we've had, and are able to express it easily and quickly, whereas a lot of the things that both of us have expressed took us hours to accumulate that schema and accumulate that knowledge to be able to express it. So I think it unlocks the schema that is valuable, because we're able to interact on that level and constantly re-reference those things neurologically. The second thing is we allow people to sing. We find ways to we create opportunity for people to learn how to sing. And when I say that, I mean like a heart song of like not just vocally singing, but being able to actually express themselves and express the ideas and the desires and the passions and the commitments that create who they are, right? And so like one of my friends, when he was kind of explaining this idea to me, was like, for him, he loves legislation, so he'll go up and he'll like go and lobby and then like help organize and do a bunch of stuff like that. And he was like, Rhett, like when I do that, that's my heart song. Like you're listening to my heart song when you see me acting in that way, because that's the environment that I sing in.
Right.
And so like you sing music with the guitar, but other people sing music with their food that they produce and cultivate and create and then process and then offer as a meal to someone. Like one person, that could be their heart song and what brings immense joy and pleasure into their lives.
Right.
And so the thing with that is that communities help cultivate the people like plants and allow them to bloom and have their heart songs expressed. And then the third thing is experiencing each other's heart songs.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, so like the personal conversations that unlock the experiences that we can then verbalize and share our stories, the heart songs that we develop and project, and then the ability to experience and allow those things that people are doing to revolutionize our worldview and allow it to become more inclusive of the self-expression of individuals.
Right. And that's it. I think that's my passion. And I've never talked about it because I don't know, I've never heard it worded like that. But what I love is I love hearing people talk about their passions. Because it gives me immense joy knowing that there's another human across from me who has a passion in something that I might not even know the first word in it, or even know, I haven't even dipped my toe in it, but I get insight on it. It gives me knowledge, but then it gives the other person time and ability to tell others. And I don't have a huge following. I don't have a big platform, but one day, how awesome would it be to have all these friends that I now have made through this, have the ability to have hundreds of people watch these and be like, and maybe like one person gets affected by something they say.
Yep.
That's like, to me, that's rewarding for, like, that will make me happy. That really will. But then for the guest who comes on and who spread, their heart song, as you put it, and other people hear it and like, oh my God, I agree.
Yep.
That I feel like that'd be rewarding for the person who comes on. And that's all that I wanted to do with this, and I've never heard it expressed as like a heart song, but that really is what it is. It's like, if we interact with each other's passions, I think that's what builds the connections.
Yeah.
Like what I was saying, like you go and meet someone, say hi to them, and what is it that makes that person tick?
Yep.
Because everyone has something.
Yep. Everyone's got something. If you can find the right key for that door, and you just say it the right way at the right time, you can just get someone to start rambling for hours. I love it. I love it when people ramble.
You can
because
see
that's
it.
when the real stuff comes out. Like and when they stop thinking about what they're saying and they just allow things to start coming out. You're like, oh yeah.
And you can physically see it too.
Yep.
Because you can see the joy, the happiness, the passion all coming out because it's just it's expression. Yep. It's awesome to interact with because you don't find that a lot in day-to-day life. You really don't. Like, for example, I work with a lot of pretty awesome people, but I couldn't tell you half of their passions because we're just more focused on making our money, sadly. But if we have that community and we have that, those small interactions and, I want to help is what I'm saying. How do I, as someone who isn't involved in my community, I'm really not. As besides this, which I don't know if this counts, I have my own community of people, but how does someone take a step in a local community? How does someone who wants to be involved take a step? I mean, it's scary to me because
Yeah, I think the first thing is just like anyone who wants to take a step out into a new business or a new religion or a new group of any kind. It's just you find what's available. And you find someone that aligns. You find you could go out and just try to start your own thing like you're doing, or go out and find someone who's already pushing. So and there's plenty of people. You've got Heal Utah, you've got Sierra Club, you've got countless groups. Like more nonprofits in this city than we could have a reference guide to. And every single one of them could use help.
Right.
And every single one of them, if you show up and say, I want to volunteer, we'll find something for you to do. And while you're doing that thing, you can interact with the other people in that room.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about money because you're not there for the money anymore. And then you can just start interacting with people. And these are people that at least have similarity enough that they're in the same room at that time, which means that there's a platform for the beginning of your discussion. Why are you at Heal Utah today?
What brought you here?
I'm here because I'm an introvert and was tired of Netflix in my room and my dog was annoying me, so I came here to talk to you. Why are you here? So yeah,
I do think nonprofit also creates that. The stuff that I have been involved with that are nonprofit or charitable, you don't ever run into the type of person that is toxic. Very rarely, at least in my experiences. It might be there, I might be wrong, but...
Well, that's the thing, is that people are still looking for the plaque on the table at the end. I can honestly say, that's become my litmus test for who I can invest time with. That's kind of the first litmus test, is who's getting the credit. Where is the end of the energy? Who's getting the end of the energy? Where is it stockpiling? Where's the bottlenecks? Whether it's financial or communal or social or networking, reputation, any of those different variables, it's what is the true intention behind the actions that I'm witnessing? And what are the fruits of those seeds? And I take that within, I use that as my platform for all things. politics, religion, everything. Every time that I meet someone, that is the first litmus test, is where, like, what does this model look like for you as an individual?
Right.
So, and I mean, within nonprofits, I've seen plenty of infighting with patriarchy and hierarchy, and trying to figure out ways to create a system that has different, like, staggering effects to it. And so, yeah, I mean, no one's exempt.
No.
Like, it's a very ingrained philosophy that we've been constantly reaffirmed in from a societal standpoint for a very long time. So it's going to take a really long time, or it could take a short time, but I mean, it's going to be a process to get to that point where we can actually delineate from self and start looking at the health of the communal as the main target and the main priority and the main mission to push for.
Right.
And during that process, people are going to slowly learn that mentality, and some people might never get it, and they might burn enough bridges that they end up walking out of all the communities, and that's completely their prerogative. Right? That is their choice. But to me, it's as long as opportunity for development and growth are there. Like, if we have the options there, and we're not worried about our profit margin, we're not worried about our like bottom line or any of this other bull crap, and we allow things to just grow organically, it's really okay for people to make the choice to walk away. And sometimes that is the best thing for someone for a period of time until they can come back. And I mean, the same thing with, like, a relationship between two individuals. If something is toxic within that relationship, my personal opinion, time is the best thing you can do.
Right.
Like, take 6 months off, take a month off. For some people, take 6 hours off.
Right.
Like, and just see what it feels like at the end of that thing. And then, like, with time and with patience and with maturity, the situation can change. Nothing's permanent. So don't create permanence by constantly giving energy to something that's toxic.
Very well put.
Yeah.
I also think in a weird way, comfortability creates toxicity.
Yes.
I think that if you become too comfortable in something, you get bored. And I think that with boredom can rise toxic behaviors because you want to mix things up. I don't know if that's just something that is natural because we're all afraid of, falling in this path of do this and then we're going to die. Because no one wants to think about that. But at the end of the day, we all have an outcome that's coming. And I think that, at least in my experiences with people, the people who get too comfortable or too afraid to take a risk with their happiness, or too afraid to separate, or too afraid to do this or that or this or that, it just breeds this fake tumor that just keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing until this eventual pop that ends up causing mass problems, instead of what you said, where if you just take a step back, see. And I think comfortability sometimes can be a killer of enjoyment. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think there's a lot of variables involved in that concept, both physical and mental. But to start with the physical, it is absolutely amazing how much your body's molding to each moment and each form of stimulation that your body perceives, right? Every single moment. Like, I had a chiropractor actually told me that every 20 minutes of non-movement, your muscles now think that this is your new homeostatic state and will start attaching to bones in accordance to your new position. So we've been sitting in this chair for this long, right? So that means that on micro levels, the muscles in my legs are conforming and the bones are molding to this position now.
Is that why sometimes, like, for example, if we sit here for any longer, we'll start being like, man, my legs are starting to hurt, or uncomfortable?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There's a lot of variables in that, but
right,
that's kind of the concept behind it. And so And then on top of that, if your body doesn't have to build habits, can it forget to build habits? And on the most extreme level that I've been able to like consider and start looking into is the idea of angiogenesis, which the most basic concept of angiogenesis is blood clots. Like, it's the creation of cells, right? So if you have so this is just a question I've asked myself. If you have someone who lived in a controlled environment with caution tape everywhere and wet floors don't run, and like never broke their skin for say 30 or 40 years, and then they have a kid with someone with the same thing, same experience in life, and the genetic makeup of that child, the DNA structure of that child, their immuno levels, their health levels, their dexterity levels, and their angiogenetic levels are based on the direct position and the copies of the two parents at the stage of inception, right?
Right.
Could we get to the point where we forget how to clot blood when we cut ourselves through a world and a society that is so dependent on the comforts of air conditioning and stair rails and all of these other things, and actually lose the ability to like,
because we take so less damage that our body just doesn't need to do
the point where your body, like, you just bleed out because your body forgot. Like, I don't know how intense that is, but that's the thing, is like, you think about long-term effective action. Like, we look at our societal normality right now, and we need to consider the fruit of the action of what does this look like 3 to 4 generations from now. Yes, we've got pollutants in the air. Yes, we have pollutants in the water, but the more that I've learned anatomy, the more I've looked at the actual structure of our daily routines, and the more it scares the crap out of me. Like, on that level, how are we interacting? And taking it even further than that. So the idea of like someone just sitting in a room and relying on comforts and that creating the tumor that creates reaction, right? On a physical level, that could be one of the causations is subconscious discomfort caused by a lack of motion, a lack of range of motion, a lack of cardiovascular movement, right? By just sweating and allowing your blood to move quickly and clean itself out. A lack of vasodilation when you get hot outside because you don't have air conditioning. A lack of vasoconstriction when you always have your house just warm enough that you're not shivering. A lack of all these things, like that, just by being disassociated by reality through walls, by being disassociated by nature through walls, the long-term effects of that, we have no clue. And I'm not talking 5G, I'm not talking radiation, I'm not talking any of the other variables that are happening in the world right now. I'm talking on the basic, most fundamental principle of we have lost our relationship with nature, and we have absolutely no clue what the long-term effects of that are. But I would propose to most people right now that we are incapable of living in nature without the comforts that we've created already, which means that we're already acquiring a response. We're already adapting a response to the environment that we've been put in, because we only had these options. These are the only things that were available to us outside of transient nomadic life. Right. Is you live in a society or you do that. And so, like, we have no clue. There's no clue. Like,
never thought about that.
It's crazy. Because it scares me, man.
Right. I mean, even to the point of like, I have someone in my life who is very pale skinned, right? And
now you have two.
Yeah, if they go outside for longer without sunscreen, they fry.
Same here.
Is that a genetic thing? Does that come through because maybe someone in your lineage stayed indoors more? avoided the sun more?
I think that it's genetic, but I think it's also, for me personally, I sat in a call center for 7 years. Like, I went 7 years. I mean, I'm already Scottish, so
Right.
I already burn in 20 minutes already.
Right.
So, but I mean, someone who's pale skinned and has a lineage of people that go red the minute they go outside, and then to completely distance myself from that reality for 7 years, no, I can't go outside right now for longer than 20 to 30 minutes without covering.
Yeah.
And if it's hot outside and the sun's direct on, I have to figure out how to cover as much as possible every time that I go outside. That's not an option anymore.
Right.
If I want to get a tan, that's a shirt off for 10 minutes and then I have to go back inside.
The scarier stuff that you're talking about, like your body not remembering how to clot, that it makes sense though, because if exactly what you said, if you lived like a bubble boy life, right, and
your body doesn't have to learn how to deal with stimulation,
right.
like the tensions of reality. That's what creates life.
Yeah.
Is the lines of tension. Right? You have water and you have land. You have a line of tension between the two. That's where the life grows. Right? You have a flaccid, weak muscle, and you have a weight that you work that muscle out with 20 times, 3 times a day for 2 to 3 weeks. That muscle has to adapt to the stimuli and the tension.
Right.
That, like, health is finding the line of tension, finding where the symmetry distorts and creates something new, and learning how to align with that in a healthy way. Right? So I mean, like, mold in cheese is good, like all these different things, like excess of anything to complete deprivation of anything, finding middle ground. Right. And so if we are in a world where we completely deprive ourselves of the tensions that create the dexterity that allow us to live in a natural environment, then we won't be able to long term.
Which then in turn, if things go bad,
what do we do?
We will be in
what
such...
do we do?
You know, if
electricity blows out, if the electricity blew out and all the towers for internet and all of the 5G and all that stuff just shut down and wasn't able to be turned back on,
it would be anarchy.
We wouldn't have trucks with produce.
No.
We wouldn't have systems with technology behind them. We wouldn't have any way to contact each other or communicate. Like, we don't have a way to keep our houses cool now through the day. Like, there's...
And then guess what? At the end of the day, you know what would have to happen? You'd have to rely on your community.
Yep. You'd have to go outside, go to your next door neighbor and say, hey, I need help.
Yeah. It's crazy.
We could do that now, or we can do that when we need to, when we absolutely have to.
Proactive or reactive.
Exactly. And so, but like, when I left for Standing Rock, my dad said, it's not your fight. And my response to him was, well, we live in a bubble. We live in an enclave of mountains that maintain us even from weather permitting problems. Right? So if it's not my fight, the thing that's causing it all the way up here is going to find its way to here.
Yeah.
And if I don't go out there and speak now, by the time it's here, there won't be anyone there to advocate for me. And so if we do wait until it's our fight, we're not going to have anyone to call, man. There's not going to be anyone to rely on. There's literally it's bad enough not to be prepared for the situation, but if we don't even have a contingency plan outside of, it's not my fight. Really?
It's an
make
equation for failure.
It's a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a no man on an island and I can do it all myself. Nope. Sorry.
Good luck.
Like, going to Smith's, you just negated your whole premise. Man.
Right. You literally.
Sorry, dude.
You killed your whole entire argument.
Yep. It was a good debate. Thanks.
Job well done. Yeah, it's crazy. I think that humans would be able to adapt if something like that happened, but at what cost?
Yep.
You know, and obviously cost of life, I'm sure, because there's going to be people who just give up and don't know what to do and are unwilling to learn how to survive. You know, I guess depending on your outlook on life in general, might be the best for the world. The planet is suffering, as we can tell. At what point does the planet say, you know what? You guys fucked up a little too much. We need to sway things back into the planet's favor. I this is a concept that I've brought up before on different episodes of different people. You know, the planet as a whole, we consider it alive, right? We consider the planet as a not necessarily as a being, but as something that is breathing and creating. Is it far fetched that there is a consciousness for the planet in a way? Is that too far fetched?
Personally, to me, if everything is mirrors of each other, which is what, like, especially in alchemy, I've noticed that I've found a lot of that in alchemic principles, is the as above, so below. Mm-hmm. The fact that everything is mirroring everything else.
Right.
And that if you see one mirror, you can associate it and have it be the platform of schema for something else. So, my personal opinion, I have no doubt that, like, there are, in the same way that I know that there are conscious beings that are far less exquisitely, like, insanely made like this body is, they're still conscious.
Right.
Like, just because they're smaller level reflections of the macrocosm that is the organism that I'm inhibiting, right, or inhabiting, then, like, and that's the thing, is even when we started looking at cells through microscopes, we realized that they are macrocosms of the things inside of them.
Right.
And, like, it's absolutely crazy how it just continues to permeate both directions. And for the first time in history, we have the ability of looking at it and understanding these macrocosms and microcosms through scientific evaluating perspectives. First time in history that we've had the technology to do this. Like, to me, the new frontier that is almost completely unexplored is ecology.
Right.
Because we, for the first time, can walk into these ecological narratives that we're watching self-sustain and actually begin to understand the conversation that's happening between the micro and the macros and all of the organisms and all of the living things that are involved in that process.
Right.
So if we can walk in and be amazed by a patch of soil for the amount of mycelium and all the other things that are involved in that, in the just the maintenance and the creation of that alone, and the amazingness of where it comes from, and the clay and the rocks and all the things that are creating the space to get the nutrients and all the things and the minerals and all those things out of that and break it down into topsoil that we can actually live on. Like, to go even further down into those rocks, into the molten core, like, why not?
Right. Honestly. So, I don't know a lot about ecology. It's not something that I've studied. But there has been an article that has been going around, and I don't know if it's real or if it's fake, or because, you know, it's hard to tell nowadays and on social media. But it's saying that we have been able to notice or decipher or observe that trees actually have forms of communication with other trees.
Yeah.
And that not that they necessarily speak, but some have even said that they almost have like a symbiotic relationship with each other and a friendship in a way.
Yep.
Where they, through either their roots or their leaves, they are able to help each other. And I don't, if that is real, if that is a true statement, how can we not look at plants different?
Yep. So here's the thing. What you just described is called mycelium.
Oh, is that?
It's a fungal network.
Okay.
So it's fungus that grows in the dirt and creates... So it's literally like the neuro landscape of ecology. Is this fungus that'll go through and it creates like a neuropathic network. It looks like, to me, it looks very much like the connective tissue throughout your whole entire body that's holding all of your cells together. And it also looks a lot like the neural pathways in your brain.
Damn, that's so
and throughout
crazy.
the rest of your body. And so this network will go through and will connect with the plants and will actually become the superhighway that distributes minerals and distributes things to plants that are in need, and it helps structure the ground to maintain the topsoil to make sure that it's not being eroded.
Right.
Like, it has so many purposes, it's profoundly astonishing. But that's a real thing. That's a very real thing. So, yeah, which is why within permaculture and within ecology in general, I try to encourage people not to look at the uniform approach of gardening, where you're just rototilling and you're plowing and you're working the topsoil and breaking down all that mycelium. You're literally killing that fungal network the minute that you rototill. And instead, and like creating these lines of plants and making sure that there's nothing in between the rows, and making sure that there's no weeds and there's no like leaves or anything. It's just clean dirt, like bare dirt, like completely changing that mentality over and being like, look, have things, like have mulch, have straw, have wood chips, like have things in between your plants. Not only by putting a cover layer over your ground does it maintain a moisture level, but by doing that and creating a permanent structure that is more natural. You don't see straight lines in nature. You don't see uniformity in nature.
Right.
Like, you see diversity. You see cultivation of species working together. And so if you create that within your own garden and you start propagating that, like, you can encourage the mycelium connection underneath the ground. You can encourage carbon going back into the ground, nitrogen's going back into the ground, because you're actually just putting it back on the dirt and watering it and allowing those things to permeate back in. Taking your leftover food and composting it and creating actual rich nutritional compost that you can then amend your soil with as well. Like creating cycles of diversity instead of lines of uniformity. and learning how to maintain energetic networks within systems instead of creating hierarchical systems where the energy just goes to the top and then disappears. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
So, mycelium is a fungus, correct?
Yes.
I've been trying to do a little research on just fungi in general, and there's a lot of people who say fungi are actually very similar to humans in other ways too, that it's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but a lot of the way that a fungus operates is similar to how a human body operates.
I don't know much on that.
I don't either.
Surprised.
I don't know much either. It's just, it's weird that we're starting to see that fungus, something that 20 years ago wasn't like, fungus was usually looked at in a bad way.
Yep.
Like, we're starting to realize that it's might be the life force of the planet in a way.
Yeah.
And
fungus and bacteria, man, like they play such pertinent roles in so many different aspects of reality that we like, and like, that's the idea of like trying to create this uniformed, perfectly clean antibacterial world that we can live in within these walls and just stay safe from the outside world. Like the amount of good bacteria, I think, I could be wrong on this, but I think it's like 30 to 40% of the bacteria in your body is alien to your body.
Right.
Comes from an outside source.
I've heard that.
So if you live in if we create a completely bacteria-free world, we are debilitating 40% of our digestive system.
Right.
like that's kind of intense. That's not a very good idea, but like, and then that's the thing, is if we have a conformity of meals, like if we only have certain things that we're intaking because those are the only options available, right, like fast food and produce from the store and frozen meals, like what is that doing to that microbiome?
Right.
Like, and
vastly changing.
So it's just,
yeah, as being someone who is overweight and isn't as on top of a correct diet, it is very bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I will openly say it. I mean, I have digestion problems that are 100% brought on by myself because of the food I put in my body. And like, if anyone wonders if that's true, it's true.
Yeah.
It's 100% true. That's how it works.
Yeah.
And you have to live with those things that you do, which I do. I want to throw out a crazy wild idea since we're talking about fungus and whatnot. Psilocybin being popular in media and being researched as a antidepressant and as a vast different thing than what it was in like the 80s, and becoming not a party substance.
Oh, there's a lot of things. Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Is it, if we find out that fungus do operate like humans, and maybe they're more self-aware than we are aware of, is it possible that they have created a substance to try and show us that they're more aware, being something like a edible mushroom that changes our reality?
That is an extremely interesting question. So actually one of the verses that I've got tattooed on my arm is Romans 1:20, and it says that all of creation groans in expectation for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed. And it's interesting because one of the last times that I referenced that verse, I was actually over at we'll just say a religious sect, and there was one of the like volunteer people that were there helping out with everything, and they were talking about how in their book they were the enlightened ones that were meant to come and bring enlightenment to the rest of the world. And like, as we figure it out, as we start like coming to this realization, like we will then be able to learn how to share it with the rest of creation, and like that we will be able to enlighten the plants and enlighten the animals and like do all this stuff. And I stopped him as soon as he was done talking and said, well, that's interesting, because based on where I like the doctrines that I was taught, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
Creation is very aware. The birds are extremely aware. Like the plants are extremely aware. The water is extremely aware. Like these elements are actually extremely, extremely resiliently wise. And when you take into consideration how long a rock and a mountain has been sitting there, if that thing's conscious and aware of its surroundings, like that thing is extremely, extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
Air, trees, all of these things, like, and so even within Christianity, like that reaffirmation of like nature knows what she's doing. Oh, yeah. Like she's not confused at all. Like she knows homeostasis. She knows what her homeostasis is, and she knows what it's not. And what we're doing right now throughout history over the last 40 years and 400 years, since 1200 BC, this whole entire time, like it's very obvious through nature's reaction that she's waiting for us to get it.
Yeah.
She's waiting for us to understand, and she's groaning in expectation. It's difficult to hold the burden of human experience right now and try to rectify the messes that we leave. Yeah. Either on a low level on a beach by leaving a bunch of plastics and stuff, or on a huge level by a company illegally funneling chemicals into a river.
See, and I really wonder, going back to what I said with the planet being conscious and having these things, like, and this is something that I would have to research if it's even knowledgeable, but there's berries that can kill humans. There's mushrooms that can kill humans.
Oh, yeah.
There's plants that harm humans. Have those been around forever, or is that a product of humans being around, killing plants, and then them having to react?
Create a resiliency network.
Create something to be like, hey, how about you stop? Like, you guys are doing this. That's why I brought up the mushroom thing, and I know that there's other substances and other plants and different things throughout the ecosystem that can cause, I don't know how you say it, I don't want to say psychedelic because that's a a weird word, but create a different mindset if you consume it and allow for a different perspective. Coming from someone who has tried psilocybin, um, it changed a lot of my outlook, and it was literally grown from the ground.
Yep.
You know, and it blows my mind that moment in time was so defining, just because I ate something that the earth generated.
Yeah.
Like, why is that a reality that doesn't get talked about? Because it showed me a lot of things, and it changed a lot of things for me. And
that's the thing is, like, as far as like the beginning of your question of has creation created plants that are like anti-human, or have those always been there?
Right.
I mean, the adaptability of reality is astounding.
Yeah.
Like the cross evolution of our own species, as we've learned to and been able to interact on global scales instead of continent scales or city scales or tribal scales. And I mean, something that I'm really looking forward to studying more in the future is cross-pollination of plants. Mm-hmm. And what I do know is that the gardeners that I have worked with, that's actually a big issue that they deal with, is the fact that like plants will cross-pollinate, and they'll actually take steps to make sure that doesn't happen, to maintain the genetics of that plant.
Interesting. So do they?
I mean, long term, I have absolutely no clue what this world looked like 1,000 years ago. I know that if we keep up at the rate that we're going, we will never know.
I bet if we're ever able to time travel, as you know, popular media calls it, I bet if we were to go back before the 1200 BC mark that you're talking about, when they started changing agriculture, that the planet would look so vastly different, it would make anyone uncomfortable.
You want to know what's crazy, like, especially with what's going on in the world right now? If anyone online, if you research victory gardens, the last time that we had a moment like this, and there was a huge push for local agriculture just to maintain, I think it was during one of the world wars, but yeah, I've got a lot of stuff in my head right now, so it's anything that I'm not completely 100% sure on, I'm going to say that I think that's what it is.
Right.
But watching some of those videos, their plants were huge. So even like not that long ago in history, like the difference in the distinction of even the traits of the plants are changing. Like everything's changing. So like everything's in a constant boil.
Right.
Everything's changing so drastically small, on such a small level, all the time, that we don't even notice things until they've changed enough that it causes a reaction. And that's true with anatomical in your body, plants, protests, government, everything. Like, and so, yeah, like we have no clue.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know. and it's mind-boggling to think about how much competency and how much ingenuity and how much opportunity could have had if we maintained a certain equanimity from 40 years till now with ecology and with education and with societal empowerment. But at the same time, it's just as encouraging to me that that's as viable of a future as Trump getting reelected. Like, and for all the people that are going around saying that, oh, there's only Trump and Biden, it's like, no. Like, there's anything's possible.
Yeah.
Anything's possible every moment. Like succumbing to any mentality that only has certain options, you are allowing that to be ingrained into your worldview. You can change the way you look at the world. As a matter of fact, we could expand past worldviews and start talking about cosmologies now. Like, how does my view affect the world? No. Take it a step further. How does your view affect cosmology and your relationship with it? Because now we can look at that firsthand through pictures from NASA. Now we have an opportunity to interact with levels of our reality that we've never interacted with before. We can have a conscious understanding of reality that encompasses so many different lexicons of thought, and find the congruencies and the inaccuracies between those, and come up with our own educated positions of what reality really is. And then if we can do that in a very beneficial way long term, my belief is that we create the structure that diminishes and in long term extinguishes the root that has created adults that are so unconscious of the long-term responses of their actions that they're willing to create trauma in a child's life, or they're willing to beat their wife, or they're willing to be a raging alcoholic for 15 years and then realize the character development that incurred within their child through their example, and then have to deal with those consequences. Like, if we can get to the roots, we can start changing the behavior. The root is worldviews, the way that we interact with our worlds, and that's based on the societal structures and the societal influences, and it's based on the teachings and the philosophies that we're taught. And we're only allowed, in my mind, we're only allowed as many options as we're willing to just deliberate for ourselves, or that we're able to be shared with.
Right.
And so we have to get it from the root. We have to change the worldviews. We have to change the cosmologies. We need to, in a way, develop models that are reflective of marketing and reflective of missionaries and reflective of people who have the goal of going out and sharing a worldview or an ideology or a cosmology. I feel like we should start incorporating those models because they do work, but we need to start talking about these things, and we need to start empowering people in these ways, because that long term, if we're talking generational and we're caring about what happens to our great-grandchildren, that is the only way that I can find in my own understanding that creates a structured platform that is self-sustainable, that they might be able to be grown into and be born into and be cultivated through, that doesn't have the crazy sexual harassment and abuse that we hear about, that doesn't have the crazy bigotry, injustices, all of the isms, all of the discriminations, all of the ways that we divide and create divisiveness and create animosity and create anger and create the plague of society that we're afraid to interact with on personal levels with individuals. Like we cut the root. You got to take it out. It's just like bindweed, morning glory, whatever you want to call it. It's just like that. Like, it might be 12 inches into the ground before that root channel starts rolling, but like, we got to dig all the way down and get to that root. Like, defunding the police, that's part of the stock. Getting rid of ICE, that's part of the stock. Reinvesting into education, that's part of the stock. Getting down to the very bottom and saying, changing people's worldviews. You can't force them. Build the example, and allow them to start picking at the root themselves. But the more that we create awareness, the more that we create an environment and platforms for discussion, the more we can do that work now. And it's quiet, and it's not luxurious, and it doesn't pay at all.
No.
Most of the time. but
it's more important.
That is the most important moral thing that I can think of. And and so that's,
at the end of the day, to harken off what you're saying, I think that monetary value isn't important when it comes to, do we want to have humans live an existence that's fulfilling? And starting at that, clipping it at that root is what would allow for that.
Yep.
And to give a little bit of positive to that, I think that we are digging.
Yep.
We're just we're realizing that it's much deeper than we wanted to initially admit.
Yep.
And, because what I always keep saying is, like, the generations keep getting a little bit better, and even the new generation of kids with having the cell phones available and seeing the diversity from social media and seeing how impactful just a word is to a whole entire culture, a whole entire generation, how impactful, you know, everyone knows someone who's been a victim of like sexual harassment or even worse, and the generation below us and below me and below them are noticing it at such an earlier age that they're able to learn then instead of us having to learn now.
Yeah.
And I think that if we continue that cycle, we will eventually get to a point where the positive will outweigh the negative.
Yep.
But it's just having conversations like this,
yep.
having people who are willing to put themselves out there in a position that financially might ruin them, or reputation. There might be people who come after them because they're pushing the narrative that the media doesn't want. Exactly. But it has to happen if we want to ever be, have humans ever be in an existence that's really worth it.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that every action is going to have a reaction. I mean, in the short amount of time that I've been helping document the protests and trying to allow firsthand accounts to people of what's happening in Salt Lake City, I mean, I've had every single kind of response. And I mean, I have yet to do any of that for any self-publicity.
Right.
Like, I've intentionally not shown my face on any of the recordings. I've gone through and tried to edit out as many of the protesters' faces as I can to show respect for their confidentiality. I've contacted KSL and reviewed legalities of what I'm doing as an independent press individual, and what liabilities I have, what freedoms I might be able to take advantage of,
right,
and like all these different things and ways to set up that whole system. But like, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's pushing the awareness of it and making that be your focal point, and not worrying about the response, not worrying about the reaction that's going to happen. People that are triggered from what you're doing are going to respond negatively.
Right.
People that are encouraged by what you're doing are going to respond positively. Someone that gets triggered does not mean that you're burning a bridge or that there's animosity and immediately. Like, that is an opportunity for conversation. That's what the Black Lives Matter protests have been encouraging people to do, is like, hey, hear what the testimonies of these people are in person, firsthand, right in front of your face in real life. Hear what they have to say about what their lives have been like because of the things that they've gone through, because of one variable between the two of you. This is their personal experience. This is the same, to me, it has the same value as a Mormon getting up during testimony meeting. This is the testimony of a human being and their personal experiences. And then you take those words and you ingrain them and you feel them, and then when someone comes and starts attacking that, you express for that person and advocate for them using the emotions and respecting who they are and trying to stand up for what they said.
Right.
Like, not even like making it in your own words and trying to be like a savior of any type, but just being a voice that will speak up for another voice.
Yeah.
Like, because you took the time to listen to the initial voice, so now you know their position, and you can try to, with as much grace and humility as possible, try to project that. Yeah. Right? And so, yeah, like, as we go through this process of learning how to not only interact with people in more personal ways, but to work through the traumas we've gone through, work through our triggers, work through our worldviews, work through our presuppositions, work through our logical fallacies, find the congruency in all of this, find the middle ground, find the unity, find the solidarity, and find the long-term progression towards something that looks much better than what we had. Like, my philosophy is I don't want to have a child until I live in a world that I want to raise them in, and I am still single without a child. And so until I create that world and I live in that world that I would want to raise them in, that I know has the presuppositions that encourage grace and sacredness to life and respect and dignity and self-worth, like until I live in a world that's based on these I almost find it like unjust, to like bring someone into a world where they're going to go through the things that I went through. Like, it wasn't right for me to go through those things. It's not right for other people to go through the things that they've gone through. Like, and until we get rid of that variable and we create the constant to the best of our ability, where that maintains a social structure of peace and gentleness and empowerment, like, that should be the work. That should be the goal. That should be the mission, is to create that.
Yeah. It really should.
Yeah.
I hope that one day we can all sit back and just be like, look where we really came from.
Yeah.
Because we can say that now, but are we still... Has it been that much progress in reality? I mean...
I don't know. With the LGBTQ and with a lot of the other things that have happened over the last decade, I think that we are surely setting the stage for a level of equal rights within self-expression and within diversity. And I think that if we continue to peacefully yet fiercely encourage that forward, then it will continue to create the momentum that we've already seen. Like the things that the awareness and the expression and the beauty that I've found within LGBTQ and within the Pride Parade has been inspirational. Yeah. And I don't think we would have, I know that we wouldn't be where we are right now if those events hadn't happened. And I'm positive that the people that were involved in those events are even having our current conversation of like, what did we really actually do? But that's the thing, is you never really know what the example did. Like, you don't know what kind of permeation creates. Like, even with this, like, we have no clue how many people are going to take one 10-second clip out of this and actually try to implement it and change their life. Like, you have no clue. So the best you can do is just constantly just push.
Put it out there.
Constantly push it, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And trust. Like, that's the beautiful thing, is like, I don't have to trust that my value or that my work or that my inherent gifts are intrinsically an aspect of anything that I've said tonight.
Right.
Like, that's the beautiful thing, is that all of these things in and of themselves are intrinsically valuable. They're not based and dependent on anything in and of themselves.
Right.
Like, they are just what they are. And so they're easily cultivated, easily integrated, because you just have to try to change your habits.
Yeah. And that's and at the end of the day, like, if you take those small steps, it's really not, in the grand scheme of everything that is reality, it's really not difficult to do.
It's not hard.
You just have to take those steps.
Yep.
And people are either afraid or too... I think that, I don't know how to express this thought as well, but I think that humans have this thing where they don't want to be wrong because of a fear of, like, their whole life being a failure. For example, give you an example, someone who's in their 50s or whatever, finding continuity errors in their religion, or finding something that really stands out where they're like, I don't know if that's true. And now they have to either mentally come out and say, I was wrong this whole time, which could affect not only the relationships around the people that they've built that trust on, or family, or financial, or anything, that's an extremely scary thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that crosses a lot of people's minds, especially during times like this where they realize the problem, they realize the thought process, but they are so worried that if they try and change it, that they're going to lose everything they worked for in their lives. And as sad as it is to say, you have to.
But that's the thing, is that that's how it's built. It's a codependence network. Like, and especially within Mormon communities, I mean, that's been like, so when I left Mormonism and went into Christianity, they actually had a class in the Christian church put on called transitioning from Mormonism, and they went through all the psychological effects of, like, when you leave a religion, it's the equivalent of going into mourning. Like, you're losing a community of people that you were possibly raised with. You're losing all the personal reactions and personal experiences that you've had volunteering with people. Like, the change in dynamic of an environment when you're volunteering in comparison to getting paid is absolutely amazing. It's beautiful. And so you're losing that. You're losing your community. You're losing your support groups. You're losing your extracurricular activities, the things that you were investing time into. And so in a lot of ways, it's just like losing a person in your life.
Yeah.
Like, now you have a hole where you used to spend time with them. Now you have a hole where the things that you did because you just wanted to volunteer your time, whether it be for a corporation or just in your own personal life, and if they were involved, they're no longer there. Like, you lose an actual person in your world. Like, there's just, and so, yeah, like,
you're basically restarting from scratch.
It's the hardest thing. Like, and I've done it twice now, where I walked away from Mormonism and I've walked away from Christianity, and both times lost connection with over 500 people.
Wow.
And went from being an integrated aspect of these communities where I had my space, I had my purpose, and I had a direction that I was going, and completely falling straight on my face and being like, I don't have anything at this point. Like, I can't call any of these people because they won't answer the phone. I can't interact with any of them because I've been told not to. Like, or at least within Christianity that happened a little bit. But yeah, and so it was, yeah, but that's the thing, is like, just like, but it's the same thing within corporate business in a weird way of, like, you can spend 30 years working for a corporation and then you accidentally use profanity on a line with the wrong customer and you get fired that day.
Yeah.
Like that, and then you go through the same exact kind of experience as you do with religion of 500 people that you were working with. You don't ever get to see them again. Like, the friends that you were sitting next to that you were, like, doing crossword puzzle in between calls, like, you're never going to, like, if you do see them again, it's going to be when they're not at work and they're going to be tired as hell anyway.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, and so that's why, going back to, like, how can you get involved with things, that's why I think that being extremely intentional with your decision of who you want to work with, and the different organizations and things like that, and really, like, really thinking that through as you're making those decisions,
not jumping into
exactly. Yeah. So because there are plenty of well-intentioned groups that are doing the best they can.
Right. There
are plenty of not well-intentioned groups and corporations that are also doing the best they can. So finding the one that you align with the best, and really, really, really looking at their intentions and the fruit of their actions up to that point, and making the decision if that's where you want to involve yourself. And then if you can do that with really good reflection and start investing time into the right group, yes, you're going to have people in that group that are subordinate. You're going to have people that are trying to build a hierarchy and get at the top of it. You're going to have people that just cause drama because they're in subconscious pain, because they're stuck in a reality that's not giving them what they really need to be fully vital in their life. But as long as the overall structure is going in the direction that I agree with, so like the Utah Permaculture Collective, Heal Utah, Sierra Club, Project Empathy, New Hope Community Center, like there are plenty of groups that I'm still interacting with as often as I can. Warm Springs Alliance, like Neighborhood Resiliency Initiative, like there's plenty to get involved with, and everyone's going to have their flaws, but finding one that like actually has a really good moral ground and is pushing towards something that is not self-exalting, but has a mission that is creating a reality that people can live in for the sake of creating a reality so that people can live in it. So like, and getting involved with that and then slowly beginning that transitionary period over to a new life, like it's hard, it's painful, it feels a lot like having someone die in your life, like, and it takes, just like someone dying and going through a mourning process, it takes time.
Yeah.
Healing takes time in every single regard. It takes time of interacting with what you need to interact with, and it also takes time of depriving yourself of the thing that you think you need.
No.
But both of those, it takes the time to heal. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't even know how long we've been going.
We've been going quite a while. That's the cool. That's what I love about doing this.
Oh, 8:57. Dang.
Is time flies by, especially when the conversation is just flowing.
Yeah, we've been at this for 2 hours now.
I can't. Oh, Still City gave us.
We're at 3 hours now.
Yeah, 2 hours 41. Still City gave us 100 bits, which is about $1. Saying thank you. Thank you, Still City.
Fun.
If you'd like, we can go ahead and end on that.
Cool.
I would love to have you back. I mean, we didn't even touch on
any of the stuff you wanted to handle.
No, I mean none of the stuff that was in the title, and that actually makes me very excited because
wow,
that means that
funny.
There's so much more knowledge to spread around. Because I mean, anyone who listens to this, if you take away even a %, there was something to gain from this podcast, because I gained something, which I don't know if I can say has happened on many episodes.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for your time and your involvement in the community and helping Utah grow to a better place. Yeah. You're definitely, I don't know if you're a person who likes pats on the back, but you're helping.
I like seeing a reaction to action, and I like pushing it's just like in massage. I like pushing just enough to watch something release. So
well, how about this? Since we'll close out, why don't you tell people where they can find all the stuff you're involved in, and as well, obviously when I post this up, I'll make sure all your social medias and website is
So actually, I was thinking about it while we were talking, and that guy that we referenced at the beginning of the conversation, I think I've got him. Yeah. So his name was Darren. Anyone local that's looking for help with taxes, I started a LLC in May of last year. Didn't start a bank account, didn't do anything, just got an EIN and started running with it. And this guy took my phone call at 9 p.m. and instead of saying that, we'll do this and this and this and this is how much it's going to cost, he was just like, this is the process that you should go through. You can do it yourself, and this is how easy it is. And then once you get to this certain point, give me a call back and I'll be able to continue to push with you and encourage you with this. But his name is Darren. His phone number is 208-360-2035. I'm pretty sure he'd be pretty okay with someone just giving him a call and asking some questions. I'll look at the second link. So the Neighborhood Resiliency Initiative. We're trying to grow as many gardens as we can, create as much soil amendments as we can, and encourage as many people as possible to start gardening and help out with gardens in their I'm looking at this under Google Maps. That's not going to work. But to start creating gardens and start interacting with their community and growing food and helping people eat good food. We're also have put together a really good system for maybe making sure that we're maintaining COVID social distancing and keeping people safe and all of those things. They are just neighborhoodresiliency.com. So if you don't know how to spell resiliency, it's RESILIENCY is how they spelled it for the website. So neighborhoodresiliency.com, check that out, get involved as much as possible. My personal stuff is at rhettrobertson.com, just my first and last name. I have a few CDs. Actually, since it's pertinent to the conversation we've had, I've been rewriting the Bible from an activistic viewpoint.
Interesting.
And I called it the questionable context because it is very questionable. And so that's available on there. It's just kind of like the rough drafts as I'm working through it. I've got, oh man, I think I'm like 20 chapters in or something. So I got a good amount of that on there. Yeah. I can't really think of any other plugs. I know there was at least one other one that I was thinking about earlier, but it's not coming to mind. So.
I'm sure it will afterwards, and we can always make sure that it gets put in the descriptions and different things like that. If you're hearing this on any of the other platforms, make sure you guys go check out the websites that are linked. Show some love, and definitely comment something that you learned from this podcast, something that you took away, and something that you were going to try and do to better your life. And if you volunteer, reach out. I want to hear about it. I want to know what you're doing in your community. I want to know if there are things that you're involved in that are progressing your community. And, you know, I'm going to give you guys something to try and do this week. Go to wherever your downtown is, whether you live in Utah or California or Russia. I know we got some Russian fans and some Sweden fans and some German fans.
Cool.
Go talk to one person on the street. You don't have to know them. Just go up and say, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Wes, or obviously whatever your name is. And talk to them. See how they're doing.
Yeah. And if that person isn't receptive, try another.
Yeah.
Just say hi up to the point where someone says hi back and actually interacts with you and see what it feels like.
Yeah. Have a short conversation, because I promise that it does. If you are introverted, like I used to be as well, and, you know, reaching out to new people, it does help a little bit. It makes you feel more comfortable to have those interactions later on when you want to.
Yep. You build the habit.
Yeah, build the habit.
Training wheels.
As far as everything else goes, thank you everyone who is watching live, and if you're still hanging out here, you guys rock. And I personally will be back tomorrow, 12:30. We'll be doing the part 2 of the Read Between the Wines book club for Chuck Palahniuk's book Haunted. It's a wild one. I don't know about that book. As well as a couple other podcasts tomorrow that are scheduled. Make sure you just check all the socials. You'll see it there. And if you are interested in the part 2, I would love to work that out with you and have you come back and, you know, share some more knowledge.
Yeah, totally down. No, this has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close it out. There might be an outro music for those of you listening on different platforms. I hope you enjoy it. Goodbye for now.